the prime time.
What's up, guys? Welcome to our first ever head versus head bracket. I'm super excited to get started. I'm your host, Hunter Chambers. I'm joined by my co-host Chad and Carrie. How's it going, guys?
I'm not exactly sure where Carrie is. I think she's busy this moment, but I'm doing very well. And this has been a bracket that we're doing that's been like a long time in the making. I was like, hey, Dylan, you're one of my best friends. Matt, you're one of my best friends. Why don't you come in and fight and just like say, just
I fight for my
each
friendship.
other. And just, just like, what movies do you guys like? And let's see who wins the bracket as far as like the one movie that one person put on that happens to win. But it really doesn't matter. It's just, for fun, like, hey, what movies do you guys love? And let's compare them. Let's compare and contrast and figure out, what beats each matchup. And I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. But what we did was I asked Dylan for 16 of his favorite horror movies and Matt for 16 of his favorite horror movies. And we matched them up in a 32 movie bracket, 16 matchups, and we'll go down to one. And the caveat is, what were you guys putting it is that you didn't necessarily put your favorite of all time, but like
I put many of my favorites of all time on there, but I also picked some that would just be fun to talk about, but that are among my favorites. It's just there are a lot of my favorites that would be higher that aren't on this list, but that's fine. We'll talk about them another day.
Yeah, like
I
I put 16 of my favorites, but if I were to rank every horror film I've ever seen from like 1 to whatever, this might not be the top 16. I also left some off knowing Matt would probably put them on anyway, to spread the wealth. So, I love all these movies though, and I'm excited to talk about them, or at least all of mine. I like all of Matt's.
I gotta be honest, seeing the opening graphic there bodes really well for my list because most of them were on my list.
That being said, I forgot. Introducing Dylan Randazzo from the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. He's fire over there, creating so many different shows you know and love and can watch. I myself host a show with him called Picture This, where we go through all of the Best Picture nominees. Each month we do a different year of that, and we go through all that. And then Matt Chapmond, the Mattman, is also a host over there, and they host a bad movie show called Frame Rack. So
yes,
a little
one of the
gear
movies,
up for that.
Our very favorite of those movies
right.
is represented on this bracket.
You gotta diversify the list, I love it.
Yeah. All right, so all the introductions are out of the way. You guys want to get right into it and start talking about some movies?
Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
All right, cool. So, bam. All right, so basically how this works is we'll go through each matchup. We'll start at the top at first with Hunter, and we'll just go down, getting everybody's opinion on a this or that scenario. Which movie do you like the best? And we talked about this. Like there were questions of are we voting like about like what's the scariest, what's our favorite, what we think the best is, and basically there's no rules. It's however you want to vote. Some people have even come in and vote like given like a hate vote where they're just like, oh, I'm getting revenge on that movie because you voted for it before against something I love, kind of a deal. That's all allowed. It's like whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter as long as we get some great discussion about the films. That's kind of what it's about. And if there's any, there won't be ties because we're an odd number of people. So this will be fun. Let's get into the first matchup, which is Let me zoom in. All right. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Scream versus Mad God. Very, very interesting matchup. Hunter, why don't you start? I think I know what you're picking.
Yeah, so this is easy for me. Scream is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Mad God is interesting, but I personally didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I think the atmosphere is really cool in it, but I couldn't get into the story. Scream has an all-time cast. The script is incredible. It breaks down horror movies in a very unique way, and it gave us one of the best final girls in Sidney Prescott. So I'm going with Scream.
All right, down to me. Yeah, Mad God is like one of these movies that kind of take after like movies like Eraserhead. Like it's very abstract, but it's like really interesting in the way that it was put together. It's kind of like a stop motion kind of animation, but it's like all imagery and all kind of like you're in a nightmare basically, which there's a lot of movies that are like that. I feel like that are so just one of a kind, but like also in their own like little subgenre of horror, where it's like just you're watching a nightmare. It might not even make sense, but you get the vibes, as the Gen Z would say, I guess. But Scream. Speaking of older than Gen Z, we got Scream from 1996, which is like I think one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It is the one that got me into horror. It's also the one that basically created the show, because we were all Scream fans, all three of us, and we actually just watched it last night to introduce one of my friends to it for the first time and revisit it for a lot of our other friends, and we had a blast watching it. And it's just one of the greatest like movies. It's like a comeback for slashers. Kevin Williamson wrote a phenomenal screenplay, and it's just also extremely fun, especially Matthew Lillard's performance. I think it just makes that movie. Without his performance, I don't know if I enjoy it. I enjoy it nearly as much. Yes. So Scream, an all-timer, love it to death. Carrie.
Okay. Yeah, Scream is also one of my favorite horror movies. It got Chad into horror, which I love because I've always been into horror, and he didn't used to watch horror movies with me. And I think also it's just such a classic. We actually watched it with a friend last night who it was her first time seeing it. And it's just so exciting to watch it with someone who doesn't know who the killers are yet and everything. Mad God it deserves a rewatch for me because I was not 100% paying attention when I watched it. And that is a movie I feel like you need to 100% pay attention to really get into it. I'll say it's extremely artistic. Like what was his name? Phil Tippett?
Yes, Tippett.
Tippett. Yeah, what he accomplished, I think, with this movie is, and I know he worked on it for like a decade or something, like it's phenomenal what he accomplished. It is just like kind of a rough watch too, though. So I think I'm going to go with Scream, but like mad props to Mad God.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not the easiest matchup for Mad God here, but I don't know. We'll see. We still got Mattman and Dyl. So Mattman.
Mad God I watched for the first time for this bracket, and I really liked it, but I do get what Hunter's saying and that and Carrie, where it's like you have to be paying attention. You have to really kind of hone into the imagery and what's going on with it. The story of it, and I couldn't quote it back to you right now, but the story of it's really cool about how long it took to make and all that. I'm sure Dylan has that information, putting him on the spot there. But I did very much enjoy it. But Scream, listen, I think I'm the only one on this year that was a teenager the intended audience when this movie came out.
I was 6, so.
So
I was -2.
So is Dylan. Crazy. No,
I don't want to make it feel older, Matt. I let Hunter.
No,
do
that's
that
fine.
for
I know how old you are. Listen, I was the intended audience, and let me tell you the impact this movie had on me and just my generation of people, because we had never seen something like that. Yeah, we'd seen slashers, and this was a slasher. This is even a by the number slasher intentionally. But there's just a lot of the self-awareness of it was just incredible. And I mean that we had seen that in other things. I mean, Wes Craven had done that already by this point. But the self-awareness was a thing. It was culturally just huge. And it's still one that I visit at least once a year. I think I've watched it this year twice this year. It's a movie that I continuously watch, and for me, Scream is going to be the vote for me.
Nice, Dyl.
Yeah, I actually did pull up my list, so I do know what I put on the bracket and what I didn't. Scream was one I knew Matt would pick, so I didn't pick it, so it's not part of my 16. But that's not to say it's not one of my favorite horror movies. It's obviously influential and iconic for all the reasons you all said, and it taps into that like perfect kind of relatability in terms of generations. You can watch it as a parent, as a kid, as someone who's getting into horror, as someone who is more experienced and knows the tropes to like laugh at. So I think it kind of hits all the bases in terms of horror audiences. It's a very mass appealing film, whereas Mad God's the total opposite. It's a very niche kind of crowd it's aiming for. It's very much experimental in the almost Lynchian way. Yeah, as Carrie said, it took Phil Tippett so long to make this film. He started conceiving it when he was doing RoboCop 2 in 1990. So it was about 30 years. But he didn't actually start making it until a little bit further down the line. But he was trying to get all the resources for it. And every year he would add more and more parts to it. He built everything by hand in his basement, I think, or something like that. Or whatever his space, his creative working space was. I don't know if it was a basement or a warehouse or what. But it was really just like him slowly adding all these little details to the world building. And I think when I think horror, it's like, you know, it's easy to find relatable, scary circumstances. Oh, someone's trying to kill you. There's a monster attacking you. But I think the actual visualization of a nightmare is something very hard to capture on film, because we all know what a nightmare feels like and is and sounds like and what we envision in our heads. But how do you actually visualize that for the screen? And especially every nightmare being so personal to every single person, it's like, how do you get other people to understand what your horrors and fears look like visualized? And I think Phil Tippett does a really good job with that in this film in particular, visualizing this kind of hellscape and like, this is his hell, his nightmare. Like, this is what you see if you were to kind of screw off the top of his head and dissect his brain in a way. So I really like how he just visualizes that through the production design, through the sound, all the different steps this guy takes and all the squishes and squashes. And it really just kind of harkens back to this era of filmmaking where everything was so tangible and practical, which we don't see nowadays. Everything's green screen, everything's digitized in a way. Everything feels like a rehash of something else, whereas this one feels wholly original. This was not in my original 16. After we had some overlap, Chad asked me to give more titles, so this was one of the ones that made it on at the last minute. So it makes sense that it's kind of like the first one to fall out of the bracket, though I did want to give it its due just for its originality. But I would also vote for Scream. I think Scream is just the better film and the one I enjoy more, even if I think Mad God is a very ambitious and very notable effort that I think with more time I'll come to appreciate more, and just the craft of it is unlike anything I've seen. So
it's like when in Parks and Rec, when Adam Scott's character is trying to make a stop motion film, and then he's just like, this is taking forever. Because like you take just like a few pictures and you spend all day and it's like 2 seconds.
Right? Yeah. And now what? Now he has to just throw out all that. Like, that's what I want to know. I want a documentary about Phil Tippett having to throw out all his shit after making Mad God. Like, does he recycle it? Does he give it away? Does he put it in a museum? Like, what does he do? You know, like, after all that time.
Yeah.
You know?
Good question.
Please don't throw it away.
No, I'll take it.
Scream moves on, and we'll move on to the next matchup, which is Titan versus Dr. Sleep. All right. So I'll start with this one. I I like Titan. I love Doctor Sleep. So of course I'm going Doctor Sleep. I'm a Flanistan, as I like to say. I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan. I have been ever since I saw Ouija Origin of Evil. So that's been a while since like 2017. And I love it. But briefly, I think Titan is very good. Of the Julia Ducournau films, I like this one more than Raw, specifically because of a dog thing in Raw. I really hated. Other than that, I think Titan is like really cool. I think I owe it another watch because I know at least one person on this panel really loves it, and I just didn't fall in love with it the first time I saw it. But it is really interesting. It's like unlike anything I've ever really seen, because it's got like a really deep story with it, but it's also just you could kind of like the whole Shape of Water, like a woman has sex with sea monster or whatever fish, with woman has sex with car. You can kind of say, but if you don't, there's some deeper stuff in there, and the imagery in it is like really beautiful and photographic and stuff. So it's a good movie. But Doctor Sleep is also very photographic and just like beautifully shot, and just I don't know how they did some of the sequences in there with like Rose the Hat and Abra, and them basically fighting with the Shine and stuff like that. Just like has some epic villains, epic sequences, just an epic story. And I love how they were able to bridge the gap between Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and the Stephen King world, with his Doctor Sleep book and his The Shining book. And they had like a big kind of feud, mostly on Stephen King's side, basically just saying that movie's not at all like my book, and stuff. And Mike Flanagan was like, hey, I understand both worlds. I'm going to meld these two together and make something really special. And I don't know if I would necessarily say it's better than The Shining, but I think it's up there. I think you could make a serious argument for it because I do think it dives deeper into character work and stuff like that, and it has great visuals, whereas The Shining's kind of, mostly, I think, just a visual masterpiece. But Doctor Sleep, I think, hits all of the aspects of it, and it's just a really beautiful story, and the acting is phenomenal. And I could go on because it's a 3-hour movie. Watch the director's cut because that adds like the chapters and some other stuff. And yeah, it's beautiful. Can you tell I love Mike Flanagan? I'm picking Dr. Sleep. Harry.
Sorry, Chad's mom texted us. I was listening. Titan, yeah, I like that movie so much more than I thought I would going into it. And I agree with Chad. I do prefer a little bit over Raw. I think it's just a really interesting and ultimately kind of beautiful story. And just really well done. The acting in it is amazing. Dr. Sleep, though, has been it fluctuates, but it has often been my number one horror movie, like of all time, on occasion. So, and maybe currently it is. I'd have to think about it. I think it's just a complete masterpiece, and it's just one I could watch over and over and over and over again. So I'm going Dr. Sleep.
Nice, Matt.
Okay, so Titan, I rewatched it for this bracket because I liked it the first time but didn't love it. I liked it more this time, and I haven't seen Raw, and every review I read of Titan, especially every positive review, talked about Raw and comparing it and stuff like that, and I was like, maybe that's what I'm missing from it. I actually know the reason it doesn't hit quite as high for me, and that is because in the mid 2000s, there was a documentary called Imposter that came out about it's a true story. It's a documentary about a guy who pretended to be this missing boy, and the parents just brought him in. And like, why would you do that if you know that's not your son? So that's what the documentary is. It's very similar to the third portion of this movie. And that's why, because like I'd seen that story before and seen it in real life on the documentary. But there's a lot about Titan I really, really love. There's like 3 movies in this movie. And maybe that's also part of the issue for me, is that like she's pregnant with this Karl baby. She's also a serial killer. And and there's this like imposter storyline. And I think that all of those are really interesting things. And I wish one or two of them had been picked rather than all three. And maybe that's where the disconnect is for me. That scene, because like there's the serial killer thing, which is funny and cool, because that scene where she has to kill everybody in the house and people keep showing up and she has to kill a new person that time is so funny. It's my favorite scene in the movie because it's so funny. And I wish more of the movie had been like that. Because then once we get to the imposter portion, it's like, I keep calling it the imposter portion because that's what the documentary is. The imposter portion, it's like, but she is a serial killer. So I want to root for her, but also she's a serial killer. So like that kind of thing. Dr. Sleep, I actually read the book for the first time within the last 2 years. And I'd read The Shining before, but I reread The Shining before I read Dr. Sleep. And Dr. Sleep, the novel, is actually better to me than The Shining, the novel. I actually prefer it's actually like my third favorite Stephen King book. It's very good. The movie, I don't know that I could compare the two right now, but I think it is that one of the reasons it's so great is because it is a sequel to both. Mm-hmm. It is a sequel to The Shining, the movie, while also being true to the book, when The Shining movie was not true to the book. The Shining, the book, is barely a horror book. It's a drama about a man dealing with addiction and trying to not let it ruin his family, whereas the movie is more about a man who is driven into ruining his family. So really the dynamic there is completely different in the way he's approaching it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about The Shining or the books. We're here to talk about this movie, which is great. I've seen it a number of times. It's probably Mike Flanagan's best movie, although Chad and I were talking about this yesterday, I think, is that I think Dr. Sleep is Mike Flanagan's best movie, but my favorite is Hush. But this one is so good. Like, it's so well made. Director's cut and theatrical cut are both incredible films. Mm-hmm. Rose the Hat is so good. I actually just watched a movie with the girl who plays Snakebite Addie in it as well, and she's great in that and in everything. Like, she's really good. But anyway, the cast is so good. The acting is so good. I would say that Ewan McGregor would actually be a really good casting for Jack Torrance in The Shining rather than Jack Nicholson. But anyway, I think this movie's incredible. I think it's very, very good. It's definitely getting my vote, even though I do enjoy Titan. But Dr. Sleep's just so good.
Totally.
Sorry, I talked a lot.
Oh, you're good. I love it. I love hearing, because it's so much praise of Dr. Sleep. So now I get to be the champion of Titan, even though you all like it a lot. Yeah, this is my favorite horror film. I love it. I think it's just exceptionally crafted, exceptionally visualized. I think just the colors and the use of neons and different lighting is fantastic. But just talking about the contents of its themes as well, I understand like the disconnect. You know, it is very episodic in a way. It's like, here's the phase with this, and then it goes into this kind of plot line. But I do think there's something overarching that it has to say just in general about like parent abuse and child abuse. And that, like, as a kid, this kid is abused by her father, and it kind of makes her so closed off with the world that she doesn't want to connect with other human beings, because it kind of gives her that trauma of, you know, that sexual, you know, PTSD she's had from her father, that all she can go to is the stuff that's not real, the machinery. And I think that's why a lot of people are like, oh, it's her fucking a car. I'm like, no, but that's because that's the only thing she can connect with, because she can't connect physically with other people. And that's also kind of what leads to the serial killerism, not necessarily advocating for it, but also understanding that like she just doesn't know humans, kind of she repels against them because she doesn't know how to connect with them, and that's her way of doing that, is by killing humans and fucking machines. But then the one man who actually sees her for who she is this dad who is suffering without his child. And I think there's a really great take of the film where maybe he does know it's not his son, but maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he just needs that connection because he is someone who needs the physical connection and that emotional connection, where she's someone who very clearly does not want it, but together they kind of balance each other out in a very beautiful way. And I think there's a really great kind of subtext to be had just about gender identity in general. The fact that she kind of slips into this other skin in order to kind of hide at first, but then through going through that change and that transition finds the true humanity that she was seeking ever since her father deprived her of it as a kid. It's a really cool trans allegory as well in that sense. So I think it's just it's got a lot of really interesting ideas on its mind. I think that central relationship between Vincent Lindon's character and Agatha Roussel's character is just so beautiful because it's very unconventional. And yes, like I think the serial killerism, like advocating for, like, are you going to root for her or are you not? It is tricky and it's hard to get past, but I think when you understand that, like, you're not necessarily rooting for her to like get away with it or to like even succeed. You're just rooting for her to kind of overcome these demons that she's had as a kid. And I think it's a really good 180 to when you do see what is brewing inside of her, and the titanium baby essentially, being this burden of trauma and of, sexual violence and all this stuff that has been like eating away at her, quite literally starts eating away at her. So I just think there's a lot of really interesting things to be had. I just think the acting is great. The musical needle drops, the way the horror is staged, the comedy that is found in those moments, as Matt said. So I love Titan top to bottom. It's a film I don't even go back to a lot because it is a hard experience. It is a lot, but I do love analyzing certain scenes of it all the time. Just like watching a scene and just trying to like figure out what she's trying to say with the subtext of that scene. So I have been a big champion of it ever since I saw it a few years ago. That being said, I like Dr. Sleep a lot too. It's one I've only seen once, so I need to rewatch it. I did want to watch all these again for the bracket, but then I realized 32 movies is still a lot to watch in a month. Yeah. So I didn't get to watch all of them again, but Dr. Sleep is one that I remember really liking. Not quite as much as The Shining. I am still more of a fan of The Shining, but I think that's just because I have had it in my life longer to fester on my mind and let myself like sink into, whereas this one is still very surface level for me right now. I want to dig beneath that surface, and I haven't seen the director's cut, so I probably should. But Titan is my easy pick here, but I think it's because it's just one of the more interesting, unique experiences, and I remember just it hitting me like a ton of bricks in the theater because I didn't expect it to. I think all the Palme d'Or winners the past few years have been these big Oscar players like Triangle of Sadness and Anatomy of a Fall and Parasite. And like this was the one that was like, well, this isn't going to win any awards, even though it won the Palme d'Or. And then this ends up being my favorite of all those films because I'm like, no, this is the one that I think is the most unique, is the most singular over like Parasite, Anatomy of a Fall, all those films. So I really like this film. It's my favorite. So I'm going to go for that.
Yeah, totally. You guys reminded me of the one scene from Titan where it's like everybody that she's working with thinks she's a guy until she starts dancing like really sexy, and then it's like everyone's confused, and it's like really funny. But yeah, everyone go watch Titan. It's a really good movie if you haven't seen it. I feel like not a lot of people talk about it, and that's really great too. That we just talked about Dylan's favorite horror movie and Carrie's favorite horror movie. So that's really
the randomizer for you.
There you go. Hunter.
So sadly, I did not have time to watch Titan. I really want to now after listening to everybody's take on it. But I absolutely love Dr. Sleep. I think everyone has said the reasons why, but there's one particular scene that really gets me, and it really hooks me into the film like after this part happens, and it's Jacob Tremblay's acting is fantastic because you don't see a lot of the violence, but you hear his screaming and his agony and just how like real that feels, that he's getting like, attacked and for his essence pretty much. And it's such a powerful scene that after that I'm like, oh, so Rose the Hat and the True Knot are these vicious creatures that now I can really root for, our heroes, because yes, I know that they have done some villainous stuff before this, but this is the scene that really makes them, oh, these are baddies. These are, really monsters that you can really, root against, which I love, but also just the acting, the cinematography, the way that they take the Shining book and the Shining movie and even taking the ending from the Shining book and doing it in this movie was fantastic. When they go back to, the hotel and you hear the music kick in from the original Shining movie, and you're like, this is awesome. It's a really epic. I want to watch the director's cut. I haven't seen the director's cut just because I want to go back into this world and rewatch it. So Dr. Sleep for me.
Real quick, the Jacob Tremblay scene, it's lengthier in the director's cut, so you really feel it in there, and it's hardcore, and it's one of those where apparently all of the actors really had a hard time filming that scene because Jacob Tremblay was so good, and Mike Flanagan, I think he felt a little bad for saying it, but when he worked with Jacob Tremblay in Before I Wake, he was like, and then he worked it with him again in Dr. Sleep, he was like, why couldn't I have gotten that Jacob Tremblay in Before I Wake? Because he's so good. But yes.
That scene
ahead,
that scene is incredibly difficult. Which I know it is for everyone, but I can't. I rewatched all of these movies for this. If I had already seen them, I rewatched them or watched them for the first time. I rewatched this one, and I couldn't watch it. Like it's so hard to get through that scene, which might be it's such a great performance, but it's also like it might be a detraction from it. One more thing about The Shining and the and Dr. Sleep is that the book The Shining is about addiction, and the book Dr. Sleep is about recovery, and that's one thing that The Shining movie didn't really capture quite as well as the addiction, but the recovery is all over Dr. Sleep, and that's another reason it's more it's definitely more faithful adaptation, obviously, because The Shining is not a faithful adaptation, but it definitely feels like a movie about recovery, which is what it is.
I would my advice would be watch Dr. Sleep and just skip over that scene, do what I do like in John Wick, skip over the dog part, and then watch all the fights afterwards.
That's fair.
Dr. Sleep moves on, and the next matchup is The Others versus Fright Night, the remake Fright Night from 2011, I believe. All right, and we're starting with Carrie.
Okay, awesome. The Others, I love this movie. It, for some reason, and I can't remember, we had all of the HBO, Cinemax, whatever, growing up. Growing up. I mean, I think I first watched this when I was still living with my parents, either way. But used to be on one of those channels all the time, over and over again. So I saw this movie a bunch, and I just loved it each time. It was just one of those horror movies I just grew up watching over and over again. I say grew up, but I mean, I was old enough to watch it. Fright Night, I know I should love it. It's like a horror classic. I just could not really get into it. Is this the original or the remake?
No,
The remake.
The remake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I was like, Karl. I was like, is that what's his face's face? Colin Farrell's face. Yeah. Okay. Fright Night the remake I have also seen. And it's just not my favorite. I don't like either the original or the remake, I feel like, as much as I want to like them. Although I do think I love everyone in Fright Night. I think they give pretty good performances. I think it's just something more about the story that just doesn't hit with me as hard. But ghost stuff is that's my number one scary thing. That's just the first few horror movies I watched were all ghosty things and paranormal things, and that just is still to this day probably what scares me the most. So I'm gonna go with The Others.
Question: do you like Disturbia?
Me?
Yeah.
Not really. Yeah, it's the same story. It's just not
Rear
vampires.
Window? Do you like Rear Window?
I do like Rear Window, though.
There you go. Matt.
Okay. These are both my picks. I picked both of these. The Others was my late mother's favorite movie. I remember when it came out, I took her to the movie theater to see it because the trailers were just so good. Because the trailer all ends with that scene where she's being well, it seems like the daughter's being possessed, but it's really the old woman who's being possessed. It says, "What are you talking about? I am your daughter." That whole thing. Oh my God, that was so creepy. So anyway, I took my mom to see it, and she absolutely loved it, and it became her favorite movie until she passed away. It was her favorite movie, which is one of the reasons I included it. But I also included it because it's one of the best ghost stories ever made. Like it's so like there are a lot of great ghost movies out there, and I'm not saying it's the best one. It's not better than some of them, but and there are even some that do a similar thing to what this movie does. But this one feels so classic. It feels so real, and the acting in it, especially from the kids, it's hard to get really good kid actors to do what you need them to do in some of these type of movies. Kid actors in this are so good, and just everybody in this is very, very good. And so, yeah, it's a movie I really love. I love the ending, and I love kind of that. A lot of times, once you get to that like reveal, like that's the end, but then you also kind of get to see like them move on with it, like content, like decide that this is our house, we are staying here, this is what we're going to do, and like accept it, and then like get to move on with their lives, and you get to see that. So I really I really love that. Fright Night, I'm a huge fan of both. I love the original, I love this one. As I say all the time, I love them equally. I just picked one of them, and I picked this one because I'm in love with David Tennant. Is probably the reason.
I knew it.
So that's probably the main reason I picked it. Also, there are things that the original does better. There are things that this one does better. We're not talking about the difference between those. What we're talking about here is this movie, which is just a lot of fun. It's funny. It's interesting. It's that whole Rear Window story. But it when you remake something like Fright Night, it's kind of like, okay, well, this movie was already pretty like weird and interesting, and you didn't really need that. So when you do that, you kind of it's kind of dangerous. And I think what they did here, the changes they made were actually perfect to modernize it and to make it distinct enough that someone would not necessarily have to compare the two, because you could enjoy both, which again I do. However, I think that for this, The Others is going to get my vote because I just think it's just so good, and because it was my mom's favorite movie. So Others is getting my vote.
Perfect. Dylan.
Yeah, this was a very interesting matchup when I saw the bracket way back when. I've kind of forgot what the bracket is because I want to be a little bit more surprised, but I had not seen either of these when Matt put them on the list. So I was very excited to finally watch them for the first time. I actually watched The Others last night in prep for this. I wanted to save it for last because I knew it was Matt's mom's favorite movie based on his review. So I was like, you know what, I want to save this for last. It feels like a good one to honor the ending of this like watching of Matt's favorite movies. I'll start with Friday Night first because that's the one I don't like as much. I think it's entertaining. I think Colin Farrell is really, really charismatic in a weird, dark, twisted way. It's one of his better roles because he does play outside of type in that role. But I do think, it is made at a time where a lot of people were experimenting with CG and, a lot of interesting new technology, but like it is a visual eyesore for me. And I'm kind of one of those people who looks for, when I'm looking at motion picture, I want to like love the picture of it. I want to love the technical merits. And I think as much fun as the story is, as good as the performances are, and Anton Yelchin is so good, Colin Farrell is so good. There's just so much of those like really like bad dated visual effects in it that like held me back from fully embracing it, because like they would do these weird effects and I just would be taken out of it. But then I think the charisma of the actors and the general premise just roped me back in, because I haven't seen the original, so it kept surprising me. I think both these films are films that like I thought the twist would be something other than what it was. I thought the whole twist of Fright Night would be that he wasn't a vampire after all, and they were just speculating and that it was all paranoia. But then they reveal that he's a vampire pretty early. So the whole movie I thought was going to be about them trying to figure out if he's actually a vampire or not. And I thought the whole ending was going to be tragic, where like they kill him and then realize he wasn't a vampire after all, and like that's the horror of it. And then when they reveal he was a vampire, it's like, oh, so this is just a fun ride about like trying to catch this vampire and take him down and team up with this vampire slayer who may or may not be a phony, but is also played by David Tennant, who has so much charisma. Like, I really liked the subversion because I thought it was going to be a lot more like different than it was. And same with the others. It's a movie that I thought I knew what the twist was, and I knew that there was something to do with like some of these people are ghosts. I just didn't pin the right people. I didn't fully get the full picture. So again, it's like two movies that have very clear premises, very clear little twists and premises and catches and hooks, but I think that are both enjoyable because they don't try to overdo it with their twists or their storytelling and twists and turns and mythology. But I think the other is just the way it's crafted. I mean, as I said, I'm a very visual like film lover, so like the gorgeous rooms and the production design and just the way it's shot is so beautiful. And Nicole Kidman's great. The costumes are amazing. And I think it just like delivers its story and its message and its scares so effectively and cleanly. It's almost a classic. It almost feels like a classic that could have been part of like the 60s or 70s wave of like that older, grander, like the masterpieces we know of today. So I feel like it has just that great classicism going for it. Even though Fright Night was a more enjoyable experience, I like the others more as an overall film, and I felt like that was just the deeper film for me. But I like both these films, and I'm intrigued to go watch the original Fright Night because I do think the actual story is just very fun and engaging, and I want to see what other actors can bring to those very fun roles. And another thing I liked about the Fright Night is that every character I was upset to see killed off, they didn't take the cheap route of leaving them dead. I like how they get to like just return back to normal at the end. Like I was very sad when they killed his love interest off, and I was like, oh, come on. And then at the end they get to like revive her and they get to have a happy ending, which I like because I feel like a lot of movies, when they're dead, and I like the fact that they could kind of like resurrect them in a way. So I like both these movies, I do, but the others is the one that I personally liked more.
Well, I'm sorry I subjected your eyes to Fright Night, Dylan.
I said I liked it.
I'm joking because of the visuals thing. I'm just kidding.
Totally. Hunter.
So this is the one that I have not seen either of. But I have seen the
We
original
just
Fright
ruined
Night.
both of them.
Sorry, Hunter, I didn't know. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. So I'm going based off of what I just heard, but also the one that I would rather watch more. To me, I'm not a fan of paranormal supernatural movies, and I am a huge fan of like horror comedies, especially like with monster elements. So I would go Fright Night, but just because that's the one that I would rather watch first than the other one.
Yeah, totally. When Hunter was like, "What would I rather watch more?" I was like, "He's gonna pick Fright Night." But yeah, I think these are both really good movies. I saw the original Fright Night first, and then I saw the remake. And I also like both of them. I like the original slightly more. I just think it has more style to it. I think it just like that 80s style that it has. I think the acting's a little bit better here or there. You know, if you take Anton Yelchin like out of the equation, because he's just great, was just great in everything. I don't know. I think I like some of the kills and style, like the 80s like practical effects more so than the, you know, like Dylan was talking about experimenting with the visual effects. However, I will, you know, say that I liked some of the visual effects maybe a little more than Dylan did because some of them actually like scared me, and I think like some of the filmmaking techniques that they used were really cool. Like I remember like there was this like one take shot that they did with the car chase or whatever, and I was like, wow, okay, so that they're like kind of upping it a little bit, just making it different, and I think that's what you have to do to make a good remake and something that's worth seeing rather than just watching the original. And I think Fright Night, the remake, does enough to warrant that, you know, especially with like an all-timer like David Tennant, you know, performance and stuff as well. You know, so I do like that one as well, but I also will pick the others because I just think it's a really, really great movie. I remember back when it was coming out, it was when I didn't watch horror and I saw that trailer with I am your daughter, and I was like, I'm not seeing that. And then much later in the game, I kind of knew that there was like a twist, but I didn't really know what it was. And then when I finally watched it, I was like, this is a pretty epic ghost story. I like the setting and the decade and all the different kind of twists of who's who and stuff. And I think it just ended up being just a really great drama that happens to be scary as well, and just a really fun like ghost one that maybe not fun but just really good ghost story. And so I'll go the others. Carrie started with this one, correct?
Yep.
So we will move on the others.
There's one thing I will say for the Fright Night remake over the original, which I think there are several things that they can trade back and forth. But one thing that is absolute is that Evil Ed in the remake is far better than Evil Ed in the original, because that he almost makes you want to turn off that movie. I hate Evil Ed in the original.
I was just about to disagree with you, because I don't like Christopher Mintz-Plasse in the movie like at all.
Really?
So I think that might be
so much more manageable. Oh my god!
It's possible that I might be misremembering, but I think I remember like the manic energy of the original, but I don't really remember it all that much. So you could have a very good point.
Worst.
All right. So moving on to the next matchup, which is Jennifer's Body Through the Trees. We don't sing that enough. Versus Troll 2. All right. I wonder who put that on. All right. Speaking of, Matt, you can start.
All right, guys. I think we owe it to Troll 2 to let it pass through this round. But let me just here's the thing. I love Jennifer's Body. It's very, very good. Diablo Cody, who wrote it, is I basically love everything she writes. She's a very, very good writer. I love Jennifer's Body. I love horror comedy. It's a movie that really works for me. So I really love that. Troll 2 is the greatest bad movie that's ever been made. It is at the top of Mount Trashmore on Framerec. It is our favorite movie. We did a commentary. You should all go listen to it. Where Dylan and I sat down and watched Troll 2 together and commented the whole time. There's not a scene in this movie that isn't watchable. There's not a moment of this film that doesn't just bring joy to the soul. And listen, do you see what's written on that door? That's hospitality. And you can't piss on hospitality. I won't allow it. That's all. Troll 2, please.
Dylan.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Troll 2 was not on my list, but then Chad was like, you guys need to give more because you had some crossover. So I said, okay, you know what would be fun? Like, let's put Troll 2 on there. And Chad went, Dylan, you're gonna need to give me another one. And I was like, oh, he goes, look who you're up against. Like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah. So Troll 2 I didn't originally put, but then like when I thought about it, I was like, this would be cool because if you're looking at like a star rating, like this isn't gonna be my top 16. But if I look at like the 16 movies I'd most want to rewatch or like most want to show people, like it's funny. This is the battle of the bad movies in the sense that like Jennifer's Body, not well acclaimed at the time when it came out. It got a cult following. Troll 2, not acclaimed at the time it came out. Still not acclaimed, but got a cult following. So I think they both have similar paths. I think Jennifer's Body, though, actually is a great movie. Like I think it's actually well stylized. I think there's great use of color. There's awesome direction. The acting is fantastic. The sexual chemistry and the lesbianism themes in there as well. And then the horror is really solid. And it is kind of one of those movies I look for more for just entertainment value than like something deeper necessarily, but there can be deeper things to be found. Troll 2 is purely entertainment, but I think, when looking at horror films, you also think of horror of production and just horror of like, how the fuck did they make this? How did they get this made? Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. But I do think it's one of those things where it's more than just the movie. It's the story. It's the legacy. It's the wild production of it that just makes it such a fascinating thing. And I really do think it is, like Matt said, it is still watchable. And I think that's the thing, is like, it's bad, but it's enjoyably bad throughout. It's not like a movie like I think of like Birdemic, where like you hear those birds and you want to turn the volume down. Like it genuinely can annoy you. There are movies that are so bad they're good, but have just elements that annoy you. This is not necessarily one of them. This is one where it's like any element that might annoy someone in terms of like, an uppity critic is just entertaining still. Like, and I think that's the best part of Troll 2. And through doing the commentary with Matt, I realized that there are actually some genuinely good, creative, funny beats. It's just they're very far and few between. But there are genuinely some, like the cut after he goes to zip down his pants to his father carrying him upstairs to send him to his room is great, because like the Mandela effect of my brain thought when I saw this as a kid that he actually pissed all over the table, and we saw it, but we didn't. And I just love that like quick cut. Like that's a fun editing gag. Like they do clearly have some fun moments. It's just all a jumbled up mess, but it is a glorious mess. And I do think if I am to rewatch one of these, if I want to say which one of these is my favorite movie to watch, like if I had to sit down and show a group of people on a horror night with a bunch of popcorn, Halloween candy, it's October 31st. We've already watched John Carpenter's movie. What are we putting on? Troll 2 is my vote. So I'm going Troll 2.
Nice. Hunter.
I hate Troll 2. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I watched it when I was younger. Did not like it. I watched it with my dad. My dad didn't like it either. Matt is gone. I really love Jennifer's Body. I think the chemistry between Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried is really good. You have like a really stacked cast, talking about Adam Brody, Kyle Gallner in like two or three scenes. Just Diablo Cody's writing is really good, and it's a movie that was mismarketed so badly that nobody went to watch it. Because if they marketed this not as this kind of teen, monster movie where, Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried kiss, but the movie about a friendship that's being broken apart by the monster, and talking about growing up and being in high school and all the stuff that's really good about it, this movie would have done better. I feel like I'm going Jennifer's Body.
Yeah. I'm kind of like mid on Troll 2. I've only seen it, I think, all the way through once, although I think this might be one of the movies that came on like a Cinemax or something when I was a kid that either my parents were watching or something. And I has these like weird like visuals from like childhood visuals of like, monsters eating like green stuff or whatever. And I'm just like, what the was that? And I think it was like Troll or Troll 2 or something like that. But yeah, so I have that memory, but I did watch it all the way through. I guess it was kind of long ago, so I barely remember it. I just remember the oh my god, the thing that everyone knows from that, and then like some other beats. But it makes me really want to rewatch it soon, and then watch the frame wreck episode and just have a lot of fun with it, because I love that you guys love this one. Like it's like at your top of the frame wreck charts and stuff like that, because you can have like a really bad movie that is just so bad that it's just really fun to watch. And I'm like that with The Room. Like that's like one of my favorite movies, even though it's just so incomprehensible. So yeah, I'm not gonna vote for Troll 2, but I am gonna vote for Jennifer's Body. There was one time Dylan actually was the one that was like, Jennifer's Body's kind of a masterpiece in some ways. And then I was like, what? Jennifer's Body? Like that's didn't even have like good scores, but then I just like heard
Bazinga.
Other people too that were talking, like praising it and saying like you should like revisit it. I watched it all the way through after Dylan recommended it, and then I was like, no, I don't think you're on the money here. And then I listened to an interview with Megan Fox on the Eli Roth podcast, and I just like listened to her like talk about like her career and stuff like that, just like made me like recontextualize her. I feel like a lot of people just got so anti Megan Fox. It's like the Megan Fox movie. I'm not gonna go see that and stuff like that. And then you realize it's actually kind of brilliant and plays into the whole thought about like getting a career because like you're attractive, not necessarily because of your talent. And then what that kind of does when actually the person is talented, and then we have a movie that proves that here with Jennifer's Body. And I think the horror hits really well, and it's a great like teen movie. And like I sang part of the song. It's just got an epic song in it. Low Shoulders, like one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And it's got a lot of great like people pop up, like J.K. Simmons pops up, and you're just like, whoa. Chris Pratt, so it's just got a lot of really interesting people in there. Yeah. And it's just a really, really good movie that I like a lot. And I just love that I came around on it so hard that it's like, if Carrie one day was like, let's watch Jennifer's Body, I'd be like, all right, fine. Let's watch it right now. I'll go Jennifer's Body because it's so good. Carrie.
Yeah, Jennifer's Body, I really like that movie. I think it's really well done. Like the horror in it, like Chad was saying, is really good. Some decent acting. There's just so many fun and funny moments in that movie. And I like it kind of as like a satire of like the high school experience. Troll 2. There are bad horror movies I will totally go to bat for. Troll 2 just isn't one of them for me. I'm sorry, guys.
It's all right.
I promise that I will rewatch it, and trying of like a new. But I'm gonna have to go Jennifer's Body. I'm sorry.
Honestly, though, like even if we had like revisited Troll 2 and like came around on it, this matchup's tough because we're just big fans of Jennifer's Body.
Yeah.
So,
but like I said, they both
kind of be a tough matchup.
They both kind of fit a similar mold, though. Like I think it is one of those things where like you do come around to it in a cult-like way. You find enjoyment out of it despite its camp or in some sense badness. It's funny because I voted against my own film, but I'll champion it in the next round. Don't worry.
That's a great point. All right, moving on to the next matchup, which is The Cabin in the Woods versus Halloween.
Oh no,
this is not cool.
Yeah. Yep. Randomized. So we're starting with Dylan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take too much time here. I don't know if it's famously, I watch Halloween every Halloween, as I'm sure a lot of other people do. Cabin in the Woods, I've seen it a few times, tried to like it more every time. I like it, but it's not like, I hear a lot of like, this is a masterpiece, this is amazing from a lot of people, and I just have never been able to get to that wavelength. I think it's fun, I think it's good, it's got good performances, but it's never quite hit that high that so many other people have seen in it. Whereas Halloween is like one of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion. So I think it's one of those things with Jennifer's Body with you, Chad, where I feel like the more and more I watch Cabin in the Woods, I could get closer to that wavelength. But Halloween is my pick here pretty handily. Even though I didn't put either of these on the bracket, I didn't put Halloween on there because I knew Matt would, and I know we both love it, and I know everyone here loves it, but everyone here also probably loves Cabin in the Woods. So it's a tough matchup for Cabin in the Woods to get Halloween in the first round, but Halloween's gotta sail through. It's the Michael Jordan of this bracket, I think.
Yeah. Hunter.
This is really tough. I mean, Halloween is a classic. It is the movie that you think of when you think of horror. Michael Myers, as the shape, is iconic. Just because I know it's not going to win, I'm going to give my vote to Cabin in the Woods, only because I love movies that are like self-referential. I can't say the word correctly, but you know what I mean.
Referential.
Yes, there we go. But this movie, kind of like Scream, dissects the genre of horror in a way that's really interesting and fun. You have like not only just the types of characters that our main leads are, but you have like the different killers, and you have like the big room where they have the different different killers and different monsters and different creature effects. The ending of this movie is insanely fun. It's a really fun movie that I can go back and rewatch multiple times. Same with Halloween, but just because I know Halloween is winning, I'm voting for The Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength as Hunter. Not on my vote, of course, but on my appreciation of A Cabin in the Woods. I think it's just because, like, at the time, when I didn't know as much as I know about Joss Whedon, I was a huge Joss Whedon fan, Drew Goddard, all that stuff. And to see them, because I'm a huge Buffy fan, to see them make this horror movie that, like Hunter was saying, like kind of takes after Scream a little bit, where it's very self-referential. It's got like a lot of like Buffy or a couple Buffy actors in it, and Buffy and Angel, I should say. But
and Dollhouse.
Yeah, true. The way they have this, because it's essentially like an Evil Dead movie, yet when you get there, there's so many like twists and turns, and it's like way different because there's people like watching them and like orchestrating these things rather than just a demon book that they read. And then you get to find out that like they're kind of doing it all over the world and stuff like that. And it's just like there's so many like levels to it. I would never say that it's as good as like the first two Evil Deads or anything like that, but it's such a unique movie and so fun. The Bradley Whitford is like, tequila is my lady, stuff like that. It's just like really funny. It's just
Mermaid
really
scene,
fun.
amazing.
Oh yeah, it's just really funny movie. And it's actually really scary too in ways. And it's just a big like crowd pleasing movie. I feel like I saw it in the theater when it came out. I just remember just everybody was just having such a great time, and I don't know, it's just a really fun one to revisit. Got an early Chris Hemsworth in it. It's just a really cool movie and really funny, so I like that one a lot. But yeah, Halloween is a masterpiece. Like Dylan said, it's one of the greatest movies of all time, not just horror movie. And I think it could be argued, and I have done this, argue that it's the greatest horror film ever made. It's definitely up there. There's so much style to it, but it has a perfect screenplay, perfect like characters. It's like a perfect template to basically create what we know as like the modern slasher and everything. And it's just such a beautiful movie, and it's so impressive what they were able to do with like $300,000, and they shot it in like 11 days or something. I could be off on that, but it was like really like they didn't take a lot of time. And it just gets in, gets out real quick. Just a perfect little horror movie that ended up making a lot of money and just like changing the game basically. So Halloween rules. Carrie.
Yeah, I love Cabin in the Woods. I think it's hilarious. It's a movie where, like, even after you've seen it and know kind of all the twists and turns it takes, I think it's still a really enjoyable rewatch just because there's so much comedy. There's kind of new things to discover, or you forget certain things, between rewatches. I love what this did with the genre and like how it played on the genre. Halloween, though, like you guys have been saying, it's a complete classic. It is. We also watch it at least once a year at Halloween. We watch it, I think, many more times a year, just because it's so good. It's so full of tension and dread, and it's just the perfect like fall Halloween movie.
And on our 61 days of prime time, we're watching 61 movies between September and October. We're going to end with Halloween and do another live stream. So while we just talk about Halloween, some more thoughts on Halloween from us three, Carrie, Hunter, and I. Check that out on October 31st. Matt.
So anyway, Troll 2 is still bitter. No. Okay, so Cabin in the Woods, I remember seeing that in the theater. It's interesting because that movie was made and shelved and only was released because Thor did so well. But The creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a hero of mine. He was a god status. We don't need to talk about that. It just makes me sad. But the fact that he made this movie or co-wrote it with Drew Goddard, and Drew Goddard, who was also a Buffy writer and an Angel writer, like he was involved. I was like, this is definitely going to be my type of thing. And I watched it and exceeded my expectation in almost every way. It's not just a great homage to Cabin in the Woods horror movies. It's an homage to all horror movies. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. It canonizes every horror movie that's ever been made. It explains every horror movie that's ever been made and why it happens and why there's so many movies that are like that, like these movies. Like it attempts to canonize the entire genre of horror, and that's really incredible. It's a movie that I absolutely adore. I watch it all the time. I watched it. I saw it in the theater with my cousin, and we both completely dug it. However, Halloween is my favorite horror movie. I'm just going to come out and say that. Like, this is my favorite. It's my favorite horror movie. I watch it multiple times a year. I always watch it around Halloween. I watched it early this year for this one because I watched all of these movies. It's of course Halloween. It's just an incredible film, and I can speak more on it later because it's going to go far.
By the way, I really want Marty's bong that turns into a coffee cup.
I forgot to mention that I think the best stoner in all of cinema is Marty.
I agree.
That character is so good. It's so funny.
I had no idea Joss Whedon wrote it. I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I just learned that today. Cool.
All right, Halloween. Moving on. Next matchup is Amor versus Happy Death Day.
Oh no, that's unfortunate. That's sad.
Well, look, one is a very sad movie called Amor, and one is Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
So
you could also say Amor is a sad death day, but yeah.
That's very good. That's very true.
That was the kind of unfortunate groaning I was making. Is like, ugh.
I know it's not my turn, but just to say, I feel like Happy Death Day going up against such a prestigious movie it feels like an uphill battle for Happy Death Day. But let's go.
Not even that. Just like I'm more sad about old woman who's dying, and it's like Happy Death Day. Yeah. It's like, oh no.
Right? No, I understand. I feel sad for my slate as though I had maybe it feels juvenile right now going up against them more.
And I will say if you saw that whole exchange between me and Dylan where I said something awesome and then he said something even better. If you want more of that banter, check out Picture This over at the Typical Movie Network. Hunter, start with this one.
I have never seen Amor. I'm going Happy Death Day. Absolutely love Happy Death Day. It was a movie that I went into it not knowing a lot about it. I knew the general premise of it, which was Groundhog's Day if it was a horror movie. And I was like, that's an interesting take for a movie. So I went in, watched it, had so much fun with it. But what's cool about this movie is it's a great idea, great execution, but there are some really good like character building moments in this movie as well. With Tree going, starting as this kind of person you're not supposed to like she's this preppy mean girl. You're not supposed to like her, and then as you go on, you learn about her father and her mother and like the anniversary of her mom's death and trying to, reconnect with her father. And then this Groundhog's Day stuff happens and it makes her really start appreciating her life more and more and more, which I love. The killer is very interesting. I love the use of, again, the Groundhog's Day thing of living the same day over and over and over again, but each of the deaths feel differently. And that montage is so funny where she's just dying over and over and over again and trying to find a way to make it stop. Some really cool uses of camera effects, especially where she gets hit with the bat and it transfers from her falling to the ground onto the bed. I think that's an amazing shot. So I'm going Happy Death Day.
I was actually just looking up my Best Picture ranking from 2012, and Amor is number 4. So, kind of middle of the pack of that one. But I do think it was very, very good, especially for, its type. Michael Haneke is a very great filmmaker. I would never not call this a horror movie because I totally understand. There's actually like a couple really creepy like shots that happen, like that would happen in just your average horror movie. But I just think this is like the horrors of life kind of deal. And I think that's a true like subgenre of horror. I've never been like that narrow in my my horror classification. I mean, some people call Nope not a horror movie, so some people are very narrow, and I'm very wide. So yeah, I do really like Amore a lot, but I am gonna go Happy Death Day. The thing about it was, if Happy Death Day was just such a surprise, where I saw the trailer and I was like, that's gonna be stupid. But I think it was like after like Truth or Dare and like a lot of these other spin the bottle horror movie type of stuff was happening, and I was like,
that sounds incredible. Where can I find that?
You know what I mean? Like games like that. It's coming out next fall. But there was like a trend of really bad ones, and then I saw the trailer for Happy Death Day, and I was like, that's not going to be good. Saw it, and I was like, holy shit, that's actually pretty good. And I think it's gotten better after every watch. I think the sequel is really good too, different than the first one, and I just think that's a fun little two-parter. I think if they made a third one, that would be incredible. To the first one, I'm like, how is the baby mask not like an iconic like horror mask now? Because it's so creative, and I do like how they use the trope of the Groundhog Day and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Happy Death Day is a very interesting movie. Oh my god, Jessica Roth is so good in it, and really fun. So yeah, Happy Death Day. Carrie.
Okay. So Amore, yeah, I mean, this movie is probably actually one of the more terrifying movies, just thinking about it from like a real life perspective. And like a lot of horror movies deal with death in a way that is probably not realistic for most people, and Amore deals with it in a way, both being the person who is ill and being the person who's the caregiver. It deals with it in probably one of the most realistic ways possible. And man, that movie hits so close to home. Like, I don't know if I could watch it again, but it is just a phenomenal movie. And I think it is one of the most realistic movies about death that I've ever seen. Happy Death Day is so fun. It's like just the total opposite almost.
It really is.
From depressing to fun.
Yeah, I'm the same way as Chad. I really thought this, based on the trailers, I thought this movie was going to be really bad. I tend not to I love Groundhog Day, but I tend not to like Groundhog Day type movies and TV episodes. They just really, the repetition really, really bothers me for some reason. But this one does it in a way that's just so fun. It makes it unique each time. You really aren't watching the same. You're watching the same day over and over again, but they vary it up so much that it is really an enjoyable theater experience, an enjoyable rewatch experience. I think I'm going to go with the movie that I think is just the better movie here, which I think is Amore, even though I personally would rather rewatch Happy Death Day more. I think Amore is the better movie, so that's what I'm going to go with.
I'm slowly realizing I think Amore could actually probably win this one now. Matt, let's find out.
I mean, it's kind of down to me, right? Because we know where Dylan's voting. I assume we know where Dylan's voting.
We think.
We don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know
we
who
don't
put
know
which film on this list. I don't know.
I mean, we do. No. Okay, so
We put two of the movies we both put on. So we'll have to find out which
true.
ones.
This is not one of them. Here's the reason. I watched this back when it was nominated for Best Picture because I always watch all the movies nominated for Best Picture, even before I even knew about Death Race and all that stuff that people do. I just would always watch every movie nominated for Best Picture. So I watched this back then, and I liked it, and I thought it was good. I thought it was sad and devastating and difficult to watch, but it was also kind of sweet and beautiful, like at the same time. But like when I watched it, I was just like, okay, that's good, but it didn't really leave much of an impression on me. When Dylan, and it was before this, before we planned this, and I had seen this on here. He had told me that it's a horror movie. Oh my god! Like when you guys did it for picture this, I think is when he was talking about that, and I was like, a horror movie? No, it's a sweet, sad, bittersweet movie. Like, so I rewatched it for this, and let me tell you how much my opinion changed on this movie. Number one, I see it as a horror movie now. Like I could see that. Like I understand why why you would say that. Number two, it just the perspective. I don't know what perspective changed. Probably that I've lost a lot more since I originally saw this. The change of perspective for me maybe is what it was. I don't know what it was, but just made me appreciate this on a level I had not appreciated before. Before I was just like, that's pretty good. I get why it's nominated for this picture. After rewatching, I was like, damn, this movie's incredible. Like, very, very good. Happy Death Day.
The segue is always so funny. Every time everyone is switched, it's just
that was Sad Death Day. This is Happy Death Day. That's a Dylan Randazzo joke that you guys already heard. But no, it's Happy Death Day. I think it was kind of failed by its marketing, which is why I didn't want to see it originally. Because they didn't present it as a comedy. It seemed like they were taking this baby mask very, very seriously. It seemed like they were taking this whole thing. I mean, you could tell that it was a time loop movie, but there was no hint of the comedy in the marketing for this. So I didn't want to see it originally, and then I'd heard people say that it was good, and I was like, that can't be true. And so that I watched it and I was like, oh, this is what this movie is. This is a Matt movie. They didn't market it like a Matt movie. They marketed it like a silly movie that Matt doesn't want to see. So once I watched it, I was like, damn, this is incredible. The second one came out. I love the second one too. They did they honored the horror of the past by taking the second horror movie, or the sequel to the horror movie, and making it a sci-fi action movie, which is what you do with horror movies sometimes. And there's 2 movies on this very list that have sci-fi action sequels. So then that I can't wait for when Happy Death Day Tokyo Drift comes out, because it may never happen, but I just really, really want it to, because I love this series so much. And yeah, what did you guys say her name was? The main actress?
Jessica Roth.
Jessica Roth. Yes, sorry. Jessica Roth seems like someone I would not enjoy watching. Just for some reason, I can't tell why, but when I'm watching it, I'm like, damn, she is so good. And her character is so unlikable and becomes so likable in a way that I don't think other time loop movies have done very well. Even Groundhog Day, which makes him nicer by the end, or makes him something, he's still sarcastic Bill Murray, and he's still kind of a dirtbag. This movie actually changes her and makes you believe in the change, which I think is very interesting. It's almost like originally, from where it starts, you would never be able to see her and Discount Jack Quaid. I don't know what his name is. You wouldn't be able to see them together, but by the end, you can see it. You understand why they would be together. So I think it does very much a lot with it. Amore is a better movie. It's such a good movie, but I just love Happy Death Day more, and so that's getting my vote.
Nice, Dylan.
Respect. I'm going to start the other way around, so the segue is less, less jarring. Happy Death Day is great. It's so fun. It was not on my list, but it was it was close. I considered it. It is so fun. The time loop subgenre, I guess, is just such a unique way of storytelling that every single movie I've watched with that device I just am immediately hooked by it. I don't know. It's like this like mist it has over me. It could be bad. It could be good. I'm still going to enjoy it. And Happy Death Day was that case. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Amore, on the other hand, it is deeper. It is a little bit more heady and a lot more slow. And, it's just a total pivot in style, not just in subject matter, but style. But I just think, when people would ask me what's the scariest horror film you've ever seen, even if I didn't hear the horror film aspect of it, like I would always say Amore was the scariest movie I've ever seen. Because as a kid, like my great grandmother was like in her 90s going on 100 for a lot of my like tween to teenage years. And like every single time I visited her, I was always worried like it would be the last time. And like that was something I struggled to grasp as a kid with my great grandmother. And now I'm like, I said almost an adult. I am an adult, but like my grandparents are now like in their 80s, and I'm like, it's a scary thing. Aging is scary because there's no monsters, there's no supernatural, there's no crazy psycho killers. It's just life, and that is kind of terrifying.
And you can't stop it.
You can't stop it. It's the only villain you can't stop, and I think that is what makes Amore so freaking terrifying to me. It makes me unsettled talking about it because it's just one of those things that is something that also everyone deals with. It's not something like even looking at like a movie about like extreme cold or something. Like if you live in California, you might not be able to relate to something like The Shining where they're snowed in. You don't have that relatability. Old age is something we have all encountered in some way, shape, or form. Or if we haven't encountered it directly, we have a fear of encountering it ourselves. The whole "I want to grow old with you" sentiment. What does that mean when you grow old to the point where you cannot function and communicate? And when is it getting to the point where you have to certainly grapple with really terrible, fucked up things in your mind that this guy has to deal with his wife and what she's going for? So I just think it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. It was my pick for Best Picture that year. And I also just love when the Oscars nominate a horror film for Best Picture. It has to happen more often. It's only happened a few times. This is one of those times. And I love it. I think his other horror films are great too, but this is the one of his that really just haunts me the most, even more than his two Funny Games movies and his others. But Michael Haneke's a really great horror director, and I love this film. So that would have been my vote. Doesn't necessarily matter, but I'm glad we all watched it for this, and I got to bring attention to it. So
yeah, it's interesting because some might call Michael Haneke the anti-horror director because he's always trying to like poke fun at horror and stuff like that. But that was what makes him so interesting.
Anti-horror becomes horror in a way. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. Happy Death Day moves on, and the next matchup is Skinamarink, a Dinky Dink. No, just Skinamarink. Sorry. Versus The Faculty. So, we're starting with me. Okay. This one is interesting, and it actually is a little tough because I think both of these movies are good. Skinamarink is very divisive because there's a lot of people who are like, that's not even a movie. But I could do that. I mean, well, I did do that. I did do Chapmond one time. But that aside, whatever I made was nothing compared to Skinamarink because you can actually see like the craft of it and stuff. Like they just did such a good job with the visuals, the sound design, and setting up like scares and just kind of making it feel like a big like dream nightmare scenario, and just like choosing when to like hold on a certain thing. And there's some craft there for sure, where I could see if someone and I tried this, and I had to turn like a light on because that's how creepy it actually is. Carrie wouldn't watch it with me, so I was alone, so I was just like, I have to have some light on because this is just unsettling, this movie, because you never really know what's going on. Although I know people say like there's more of a storyline in there and stuff. I'm sure Dylan will get into that. And The Faculty is one that's very underrated, and there's a lot of it's like Kevin Williamson joint. So if you love Scream, you'll probably really enjoy The Faculty. I mean, it's not on the same level, not
and
even
Robert
close,
and Robert Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez directed.
Who directed what? directed Stab.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, good point. So and the Faculty is like a really interesting like teenage take on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is really cool. And Josh Hartnett is one I love. Everyone check out Trap because Josh is very good at it. I love him in this as well. Elijah Wood, there's a lot of different people in it and that are really good. It's a great like teen, like post-Scream teen movie. And this is tough. You know what? I was gonna say the Faculty, but I'll go Skinamarink because I think I know where that might go. And I'll slightly say Skinamarink because I think it is the creepier movie. But I like them both. I probably would watch the Faculty more, but I'll give the slight edge to Skinamarink. Gary.
So did you finish Skinamarink without me?
Ooh.
Yeah, I watched it a while back because you said you didn't want to watch it.
That's true. I did say I didn't want to watch it. So that's fair. Okay, so fun fact, I thought up until like 1 p.m. today I had seen every movie on this list. I didn't need to worry about watching any movies. And then I re-looked at the list right beforehand just to refresh myself. Realized I had not. I've seen like, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes of this movie. Of Skinamarink is the first one. I was not digging it, which is odd for me. Normally, I love a slow burn horror, like one of my favorite types of horror. I love building tension and dread, and I think part of what ruined this movie for me was there was so much talk on like the Facebook horror groups and stuff about this movie. It was like really impossible to avoid spoilers about, and not that this movie has a lot to spoil, but that almost was the spoiler. And it just really turned me off of the movie. I felt like there was nothing that the movie was really building up to have because I like a slow burn that has a really great payoff. So I think and I haven't seen the full movie, so maybe there is this really great payoff and I just don't know about it. So, and I tried to fit in like more of this movie this afternoon and it got really confusing because
you don't remember where you left off.
No, Shudder weirdly remembered we started watching this.
That would be my issue. I'd be like, where they're all the same shot.
Yeah, that's true. Shudder remembered where we had left off when Chad and I had watched it. I guess Chad watched it somewhere else or something.
I have it on Blu-ray.
Yes. Okay. So that's where you are. Okay. Shudder remembered for like 2 years where we left off of this movie. But I couldn't tell if it was because the kids are kind of crying and it sounded, they must have used real kids crying because it sounded just like Elliot. And I was like, wait, is Elliot crying? Is this the movie? What's going on? So I wish I had finished this. I can't really say I liked it because what I saw so far, I wasn't really as into as I hoped I would be. I really love The Faculty. I think it's a really fun sci-fi horror movie. It has so many like hidden gem actors in that blew up and got so big later on, and it has Usher and
Jordana Brewster.
Yeah, Jordana Brewster. Yeah,
James, or not James Stewart, Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, and it's just
Wood.
Yes, Elijah Wood, the main one. Yeah, it's just such a fun movie. So I'm gonna go The Faculty.
We will at some point, if you want, we can watch Skinamarink all the way through in a good setting. If you want to give it a second shot,
I will give it a second shot, a fair shot.
I'll watch it again. Matt.
Okay. My Letterboxd review of this movie actually perfectly sums up how I feel about Skinamarink. So I'm gonna go get it real quick and read it. But let me say that the Faculty. I was a teenager when this came out. It's similar because it comes out in that same kind of era of Scream. But I was a teenager when this came out, and there's a lot of this that when I saw it was far more relatable to me than someone who would not have seen it at that time. So that's part of it. Also, it's just I really like teen movies. I coming of age is one of my favorite genres, and so like coming of age horror kind of fits in that. And there's a lot of character growth. A lot of it almost feels like Breakfast Club meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because you kind of get the pairing off at the end, and the like different types of the archetypes of different characters. This is just a movie that I just really enjoy. I've always really enjoyed it, and there's certain scenes that like play in my head. Like anytime I'm holding a ballpoint pen, I kind of fiddle with the cap like she does with her finger, like with her pinky when she's unscrewing the thing so that the drugs come out. It's just there's a lot about it that I just love. Everybody's pretty much said things about it. There's a lot. The cast is fantastic, and it really represents kind of the type of teen movie that came out at that time, but horror movie. And Robert Rodriguez is just fun. Here's my review of Skinamarink. Kyle Edward Ball had a camera, a box of old toys, and a dream that resulted in one of the most unsettling experiences I've had in years. And I can't quite put my feelings about this into words, so I won't even try. This is one of the rare instances where a theatrical experience may not be the right way to view this. The optimal viewing experience, if you can swing it, would be on an unmarked VHS tape that was passed to you by your friend who thought it was scary, who got it from their friend whose mom/spouse wouldn't let them keep it in the house, and they got it from a friend who found it in a VHS box in the woods. If you can't do it that way, then streaming in a dark room with the volume turned high is also acceptable.
4 stars.
4 stars. Yeah. So that is my my review of this movie. I will say that on rewatch, the returns greatly diminished. Like, it did not affect me the second time as it did the first time, but I think that a lot of that was just the feelings that it gave me before. I was expecting those feelings, and they weren't new. So it was like, it was fun. I am very claustrophobic, so there was a lot of this movie that made me extremely uncomfortable in a very good way. I also have kids, so the abandoned kid thing. I have three sons, and just this idea of these kids abandoned and not able to figure out what's going on and having to rely on each other. I grew up with just my sister, and we had a single mom, so there was a lot of having to rely on each other with me and my sisters. There's a lot of this that really hits home for me, so there's things about Skinamarink that I really, really love. There's also a lot that kind of makes me uncomfortable, and that's good and bad. I'm actually torn. I put The Faculty on there, and he put Skinamarink, but I'm actually torn on this one. Only because my last viewing of The Faculty was actually better than the one before, and my last viewing of Skinamarink was actually worse than the one before. I am going to go with The Faculty. I'm sorry, Dylan.
Don't apologize. It's either going to be my movie or his movie, so it's like, we're either apologizing or apologizing to ourselves. Faculty, really fun. This was a first watch for me for this. I liked it. I think the acting and the talent was really strong. It does kind of feel like one of those movies where I wish I had the nostalgia for the time, but as someone who's never seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it was kind of cool to see this premise for the first time, at least visually realized. I've heard the concept, but I've never actually seen it visualized, which is really cool. Got some great performances. Robert Patrick, all the teachers are great. BB Newirth, I know Chad's a Chicago fan, so there you go. Velma Kelly herself. But yeah, I really love this crop of actors, this ensemble of actors. It's really fun just living with them in the moment and all the hijinks that ensue. Really fun. But for me, Skinamarink is just an all-timer, just completely reinvented, this own specific genre that no one had done before, which is this visualized nightmare, but doing it with the grain. I do love the sentiment of watching it in a dark room with all the lights turned off, which is the appropriate way to do it. But having seen this on the big screen, it is really cool because the pixelation and the fuzziness is even more magnified on the big screen, to where it's even harder to make out what's going on, which I think adds to the uncomfortability and the terror of it so much. The idea that you can't see necessarily what's behind the grain. Is that an image? Is that the grain? What is that I am looking at? And Matt kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of the themes, the idea that it is about child abandonment. Specifically, you know, this is a kid, or this director is a gay director, and the idea of, you know, child abandonment specifically, you know, coming out to a parent and the parent not accepting you. And I think that's a really cool metaphor in this film. The idea that, you know, this house represents the way he's closed off to his parents and the way he's able to try to break through, and he feels trapped in his own nightmare, not being able to escape the dread of, you know, coming out to his family, or having come out, the abandonment of his family because of that. So I think that's just such a brilliant way to visualize that in a way that's not, you know, directly about it, but is very much more a metaphor used through very interesting, innovative techniques. I think it's just one of the coolest films, even if it's not one I would necessarily rewatch a bunch of times, because it's not necessarily the type of movie that aids in that. I still think it's a one of a kind type movie that I am really glad I got to like champion on this list. So I would go Skinamarink personally.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And BB Newirth is God tier because she played both Velma Kelly and Roxy Hart. Apparently,
She did. Yes, she did.
Which is cool.
I love her.
BB
Her
Newirth.
Velma is one of my favorites. But yeah, she played Roxy as well. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Nice. Hunter.
All right, Dylan, I am sorry. I do not like Skinamarink.
I didn't make it. You don't have to apologize to me.
I mean, I'm not going to say that this is not a movie, because obviously it is, and someone put their hard work into it, so I'm not going to take that away from the movie itself. But I don't know. I found myself kind of bored by it. Like I watched it in the perfect circumstance, you know, in the middle of nowhere when I was on my my trip to a fireworks stand. So I was in the middle of the woods. It was dark, and I still wasn't scared. I was kind of bored by it. I will say there is something really cool about making a movie where there is very little dialogue, and if some people found it interesting, then, you know, great on them, because that's the good thing about movies, is that it's so subjective. Like, what I don't see, someone else could see. But to me, I just didn't like it as much. But I love The Faculty. Is that, again, I'm someone who loves that 90s style of horror, and I think this does it really well. You have a great cast. It's really fun. Some really good, like, whodunit situations. I think Robert Patrick as the coach is hilarious. There's the scene on the football field where it goes out and it's the whole football team and him sitting in the middle, where it shows his face in the rain, and I think it's really cool looking. So I'm gonna go with The Faculty.
All right. Also, when I was making Chapmond, I was just doing weird shots, and then I was like, how do I make this creepier? And there's one time where Elliot was naturally fussing, and then I was like, oh, that's good. Wait, am I a bad parent? So you gotta weigh that sometimes.
Hey, you give him a big break.
No, you're not a bad parent. That's good. I forgot to mention that I used to be very, very in love with Jordana Brewster. She's got one of the most beautiful smiles on her, so that's also part of it.
Criminal Minds.
I did not watch that show, but she was in Fast and Furious, which I also thought her smile was great. That's the reason I watched that movie 15 times when it came out, is because I was like, God damn, I just want to look at that smile some more.
You know what smile I want to look at? The little telephone. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chad, you're thinking of Paget Brewster. Jordana Brewster is from like Matt said, Fast and the Furious. That's her face.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Paget Brewster, who was also in Community
and Friends.
Yeah,
she was Chandler's second best girlfriend, because obviously he belongs with someone.
Yeah,
and it's not.
All right, The Faculty moves on, and the next matchup is Black Swan versus White Swan. No, just kidding. Bug versus Bug. Two weird movies. All
Animals in the title.
Yeah. Yep. If a bug is an animal, yeah. I guess it would be, right?
It is, yeah. It definitely is. Yeah.
Bug is an animal, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Unless
All
it's a verb, like
right.
I'm bugged by the fact that only one of my movies is advanced. Like that is a
Very
verb.
true. Yeah.
That was a joke. I'm not bugged about it. I love all these.
Carrie's starting on this, I believe.
Yes. Black Swan. I just rewatched this movie, actually. I love it so much. The first time I watched it, I think in college, I watched it like on a small college TV screen, like far away. Like we had a small TV in our common room and I watched it far away. So I did not get a lot of the intricacies of this movie. And when Chad and I rewatched it, like I think a few years ago, I think for Picture This, right? You guys had this. Not yet? Okay. Never mind. We just rewatched it for whatever reason. I picked up on way more, like the things with her skin, and her skin is turning bird-like. Like I love so many of those little details in this movie. I think it's just a really, really beautiful film, like so well acted. Bug makes me so uncomfortable. I struggled through this movie. I was like it's one of those movies I respect, but it was hard to get through. It's a hard movie to watch. Like it's cool. The acting is phenomenal. It's like technically like a really well filmed movie, but I don't know if I could rewatch that one. It just bothers me a lot. It bugs me, so to say. There we go. So I'm gonna go Black Swan. And then Matt.
All right. So I'll start with Bug because this is the one that I had not seen. I had not seen this movie because in 2006, I believe is when it came out. Is that right? I think so. In 2006, I worked in the video store, and everybody seemed to hate it. They'd bring it in, and they'd be like, "This is not good," and I was like, "Oh, okay, so maybe I just won't bother with it," and I never did. And then, but I knew that it was set in Oklahoma. Like that part made me intrigued by it, and I live in Oklahoma for those who don't know. So that part did make me intrigued by it, but I did never watch it. So I watched it for the first time, and wow, I wish I had watched it back in 2006 because I really, really enjoyed this movie. Michael Shannon is, of course, incredible. Ashley Judd, who has had her ups and downs in her career, definitely shines in this movie. The big thing for me is I felt like Angela from The Office when she's like, Harry Connick Jr. is so talented. That's how I felt watching this movie, because I was like, he is for such a likable guy, he is so good at playing a bad guy, especially in this movie. It's just like he's so despicable and gross, and I just, for a movie that just makes you uncomfortable, like, to me, like, he's the most uncomfortable thing. This guy who won't stop. Like, and I mean, that's probably a good allegory for the rest of the movie too. Like, just with the this thing that won't leave you alone, even if it's just in your head. But yeah, Harry Connick Jr. is incredible in this movie. But yeah, so I ended up really, really enjoying the movie far more than I thought I would. In fact, when Dylan watched it, I think last year, 2 years ago for 31 Days of Halloween.
I actually didn't watch it for 31 days. I watched it for
trivia.
I was
It
was I think a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe.
Whenever you watched it, you were like you talked about it somewhere and was like, oh, this is really good, and I was like, no way, that can't be true. I've heard it's not.
It might have been when Friedkin passed last year. I might have brought it up.
That might have been, yeah. But anyway, so I watched it and I really, really dug it. Black Swan, I am not a fan of Darren Aronofsky as a filmmaker at all. I won't say at all. There are some movies that I really like of his. Some of his dramas are okay, even though I do not like The Whale. I do like some of his other dramas enough, but he's just not a director whose films I enjoy very much. Black Swan is the major exception. I think this movie is a masterpiece. It's his masterpiece. It's his best film. all the things that Carrie was saying, like when you notice the stuff like with her skin and how she's changing, and you don't know what's in her head and what's not in her head. Sometimes that can be poorly executed, and I don't think he executes movies very well. So this is why. So it's actually a surprise to me that he executed this so well in this movie. There's just so much about it that's just so good, and there's an eroticism that's really great, and also like, is it in her head? Is it not in her head? How is, she's in these situations that can be really embarrassing for her and really fulfilling if she lets them. And there's just so much about this movie, so much symbolism in this movie, and so much that I really, really love. Also, the fact that anybody can adapt Black Swan into a film, because that's basically what's happening in this movie, is they're adapting that ballet into a film that is not a ballet. It's about ballet, but it's not. Is pretty incredible. So I don't give Darren Aronofsky a lot of credit for things, but I give him a lot of credit for this movie. He used up all of his artistry bucks on this movie when he made it. So yes, Black Swan is advancing in my book, so because it's a very, very good film.
Nice. Dylan.
Yeah, this is exciting because I put both these on the list, so I know at least I will get 2 movies in the next round, because I got Jennifer's Body, which I didn't even vote for. But I do think Black Swan. It's
too soon.
It's my Aronofsky. It's my favorite Aronofsky. It's my favorite Natalie Portman performance. It is actually my favorite Best Actress winning performance for Natalie Portman for this movie. It's either her or Liz Taylor for Virginia Woolf. But I do think she is so good. Mila Kunis is so good. It's just so well stylized and crafted, and the way it incorporates the dance into the language of the film itself, and the editing style, the way it dances throughout, these different spaces, and just the way it uses space in her room and the claustrophobia of that, and the wide stage of the dance, all that. Amazing. Really great. Bug, I came across it a few years ago. Chad and I had a trivia match, and our opponents chose this as their deep dive movie. And I remember watching it okay, I got to pay attention to this for trivia. And I liked it so much that I was like, you know what? I wish I hadn't watched it with the trivia lens of trying to memorize every detail, because I then started thinking about it, and I was like, this is just a really good movie. And the more I thought about it, the more I love it so much. It's funny because this is a great pairing, because both these movies deal with that psychological, what's there, what's not, what's made up in our heads type thing, which makes it a great pairing for this first round. And I think Bug, just one of the best paranoid thrillers ever because of that, just the uncomfortability of not knowing what's real, what's not. It's kind of what I was talking about with Fright Night. I didn't know if the whole premise was that they didn't know if he was a vampire or not. That's kind of this as well. It's do you know if there's real bugs or not? And then once you get that clearer picture, it's just so cool to see it spiral. I famously am not a big Exorcist fan, so this is my William Friedkin movie that I love so much. This is the one that I can see the brilliance with this one. I'm okay, yeah, William Friedkin was one of the best to do it. And it was a sad loss last year when we lost him, but I think this is, for me, his best work that I've seen. I know there's plenty of others I still need to see, French Connection and Sorcerer, all these highly acclaimed ones. But I do think this is my favorite of his right now. But Black Swan is one of my favorite movies of all time. It was my favorite horror movie until Titane come along. And even then, when I rewatch this, it might fluctuate back to my favorite horror movie. So Black Swan for me is going to advance here, but it is close. It is close.
All right. We're still waiting on. Oh nope, Hunter's back. Hunter.
Perfect time.
I was rushing to get dinner done. All right, Black Swan versus
Bug.
Okay, I've never seen Bug, but I love Black Swan. I think the idea of, I kind of see this almost like a dance version of All About Eve back in the 50s, which is a really good movie. I've actually watched that one. Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis are fantastic. I love Aronofsky films, so I'm going Black Swan.
Nice. Thanks for rushing back, Hunter. Catch your breath, buddy. All right, so this is an interesting one. I've actually been conflicted on this one, to be honest. It's not far and away one above the other. Because I agree with Dylan. I think they both do what they're trying to do so well. And I'm not as far as Aronofsky goes, I'm very mid on him. I don't love a lot of his movies as far as like loving them, but I do appreciate them a lot. Like especially with stuff like Mother, that I don't think is a very good film. Impressed as hell about like the visual stuff that he's able to
films.
bring in. You know, Requiem for a Dream, just like what he's able to accomplish with just like I don't know. He's just one of those filmmakers. And like you guys were talking about with Black Swan and slowly like changing and slowly like, you know, getting, and then like the things like, you know, in her bedroom that you notice little things that are just off or different, and you're just like, oh, did you just see that? You know, so I just love that about Aronofsky films. And then with Bug is like one of those perfect like bottle movies where it's just like all takes place in like basically one location, and people are just slowly getting crazier. And Michael Shannon is like the perfect person that does this kind of thing. He does the same thing in Take Shelter, and I just love his performance. I know, I love his performance in that and this, and it's just he's the perfect guy that does this kind of thing, where it just builds and you're wondering if like what they're talking about is real or not. And like you guys said, it's the same thing as Black Swan. I'm not crazy high on Black Swan. Like I'm actually very excited for when we get to it and picture this, because I want to revisit it again just to frame it. I'm like I think it's a very good movie and I like it a lot. But because it's already moving through, I'll give my vote to Bug. But Black Swan moves on.
That rhymed.
And
kind of.
And that yeah, it kind of did. And
on.
that's it for that side. So
Halfway there.
we did one side.
Halfway
So
there.
let's try to get the other one done. If I can move over there. So, oh, well, we already saw it. So
It's okay.
there we go. And the next matchup is The Silence of the Lambs versus A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
This is gonna be tough.
One hell of a matchup here. I think I might know where this is going to go, but let's find out. And we're starting with Matt, I believe, right?
Yep.
Welcome to Dylan's movies starting to pick up steam.
I didn't put either of these on.
You didn't put Silence of the Lambs?
These are both you.
Did I put Silence of the Lambs?
Yes, you did.
Ah,
I
dang. Ah, dang. That's all right, because I do love it.
Plot twist.
Silence of the Lambs classic. I saw it when I was a kid, and I watched it so many times since then, and I pick up new things all the time. Just the presence of Anthony Hopkins in that movie, for only being in it 16 minutes, you feel him for the entire film. The Jodie Foster. This film doesn't work quite as well if she's not as compelling as she is in that role. You really feel like you understand and know her in that movie, and again, it doesn't work quite as well without her and without him, and the chemistry they have. It's almost a romantic. It's almost like a meet cute the first time they meet, because it's almost a romantic relationship, but it's not. And actually, just saying it's romantic feels wrong because of who they are and where they are. But there is like this almost this intimacy between them, even though it's not sexual at all. That I really love. The Buffalo Bill, who was played by Ted. God, I can't remember his last name. Levine. Thank you. Sorry. It was right on to my
Trivia skills, baby.
Right. No, I've got him. I've got him.
Fandom.
Right on. Yeah. Right. Ted Levine. He's incredible in this film and in that role. It actually took me a long time getting through, because I got like through 2 seasons of Monk before I realized that was Ted Levine in Monk, the same person that was in Silence of the Lambs. So I've seen Silence of the Lambs so many times. Is that Joyride? Is that Joyride you just said? Yeah, he's that too. I actually quote Buffalo Bill quite often when describing myself. I sometimes describe myself as a great big fat person. She a great big fat person. It's just everybody in this is so dynamic and just exude this authenticity that even in the things that feel outlandish or feel larger than life, it still makes it feel grounded, which I really love. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is just my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. There's so much about it that I absolutely love. I love when a horror franchise will pivot into something a little bit different, and Nightmare on Elm Street did that every time, basically. And this pivot is one that I just really love. I love that they bring back Heather Langenkamp in that movie. I love that she gets her I don't like that she dies, but I do love that she gets like a heroic moment and a send off. There's just so much about this movie that I absolutely love. Plus, to me, when I think about Freddy Krueger and I think about the Nightmare movies, who he is in this is who Freddy Krueger is to me. It's like in Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. That is that version of Jason, who he becomes in that movie, is who we all think of when you think of Jason. Mm-hmm. This is who I think of when I think of, and he's been a pretty consistent character, but just a lot of the like hijinks that he does, he's always been a cartoon character that murders. Is basically his whole shtick, and it's like turned up to 11 in this one, and it gets too much in the movies after this, and in the movie right before this, you don't get a whole lot of it because it's him coming back. Is basically the whole thing. Which, by the way, we did cover Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on Frame Rec. And we actually both loved it. Legitimately loved it. So
underrated.
It's a very good movie. But it's a movie that I absolutely love. I hate that it's going against Silence of the Lambs because I do have to give it to Silence of the Lambs. But this movie is the basis for the very title of this show, this channel. Welcome to Primetime is from this movie.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm going to go with Silence of the Lambs, even though it hurts my heart. Also, if you've never watched New Mutants Under the Lens, that it is the sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street 3 that Nightmare on Elm Street 4 wasn't, you should watch it that way, and it's a much more enjoyable experience.
Oh my God, I didn't think about that.
Great. Dylan.
Yeah, I've heard the New Mutants thing from Matt before, and I agree. I think it's great. They're also watching Buffy in that movie. Nightmare 3, it's great. It's not my favorite of that franchise, and New Nightmares has always been my favorite, but we're not talking about the other films. We're talking about this film, and I think this film on its own is really great. It has amazing kills. I think it's the best kills of that franchise and some of the best kills of this bracket, just in terms of the ingenuity of all those different kills and the cleverness of the wit and the banter mixed with the visual gag and having humor but also being incredibly scary, like the actual Welcome to Primetime kill with the TV, like all this stuff is so brilliant, just so genius. But Silence of the Lambs is like a one of a kind. It's just a great thriller. It's got some great horror elements as well, even though I think I look forward to it, there we go, for reasons that aren't necessarily its horror elements. I look for it for its empowering story about a woman kind of defying odds in a workplace that is mostly male dominated. I look for it as an interesting examination of transness at the time, even though I've heard both sides of the argument of if it portrays it well or not. I'm not 100% sure on. I think it's a nuanced debate. I don't think it's cut and dry, black and white, but also the performances I watch it for the very interesting dynamics between characters, the way it's shot and the way they use the close-ups, and then when it is kind of Clarice amongst her peers, how they use those wide shots really effectively. I think all that is just so brilliant. The score, it's one of the most watchable movies. I feel like it's one of those movies, if it's on TV, you just put it on no matter where in the movie you are, like you just watch it to the end because it just hooks you, and it doesn't have those lulls where you're like, all right, I'll change the channel now. It's like, no, you're just like going to keep watching because it always has something to offer you. Not a minute is wasted, and it's not a long movie, but it feels like you get your full like meal's worth after watching it, but you don't feel like you spent too long watching it either. It feels like it frisks by at a great pace. So I just think Silence of the Lambs is a one of a kind, so I'm going to give it to that, even though it's closer than I think it's led to believe by some people out there. Like Silence of the Lambs wins Best Picture and all, but I do think these are both exceptional movies, as Matt said, and as I agree. And you know what, Hannibal Lecter, he's still an influential character. He's still very much talked about in the news these days. That's another story.
A certain person believes Hannibal Lecter is real. That's why he keeps mentioning it.
Yes.
Anyway,
I think you know what. Teach their own. Maybe he exists, and I just never met him. I don't know.
And
we're not going to get into that now.
Yet Hannibal Lecter is right next to Dylan, so you guys are best friends.
There he is. No, God, no. The late great Hannibal Lecter. Okay.
Up to Hunter.
All right, I love both of these films. You guys know our channel, Welcome to Primetime, is literally from this movie because of how much I love this movie. But Silence of the Lambs, man, not only is it just a great movie like by itself, but there are some horrific moments that will stay with you for a lifetime. Like Lecter using the face of the ambulance guy and then just pulling it off as he's standing behind somebody, or the big angel wings on the the jail cell. Very, very scary. So many quotable lines, like one of my favorites. Hey, Senator, love the suit. One of my favorite lines in the entire movie. Anthony Hopkins is incredible. Jodie Foster is incredible as our main lead, which I love. So I'm going with Silence of the Lambs.
All right, great. Yeah, I'm also going to go with The Silence of the Lambs. Had to show off my criterion. This isn't close for me, but I do really like both films quite a bit. I think The Silence of the Lambs is just one of the masterpieces and one of the great horror movies that won Best Picture. And it's so good that a lot of people will try to take the horror away from it and say it's not a horror movie because it won Best Picture or whatever. And it's like, well, it's definitely a horror movie. But that's not the argument I'm trying to make. It's on this list and it's fantastic. And just what everybody else said about the feminism and the horrific elements and Anthony Hopkins' performance. And, we covered it on Picture This and, gushed about it. And also, like Dylan was talked about some of the minor criticisms of it, and just like how that discussion is interesting, how time goes on and certain parts of movies get reframed and stuff. But Dream Warriors, I really like for all the reasons everybody else has said. I think it's just a really interesting one. And look at that, as far as every single one movie in the Nightmare franchise that Wes Craven at least writes are the best ones, with 1, 3, and New Nightmare. He's just one of the greatest horror directors of all time. And no one's able to really recreate what he was able to bring to the franchise. While I love most of the movie, I do have issues with some parts of it, like when they start to get into Freddy's history and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if that necessarily needs to be there. But those are such small parts of it, and the rest is just living with these characters and that in the institution, and you really identify with them and start to love them. And it's great that Chuck Russell directed it, because he's a comic book guy, so he just really brings a lot to that movie, and it is super incredible, and it's our namesake, so it's such a good one. But Carrie, what would you pick?
Silence of the Lambs, like you guys said, it's just a phenomenal film. It's absolutely one of my favorites. And I think one of the things that's so well done is showing how Jodie Foster as a woman operates in this world that, especially in the 90s, was this world of being an FBI agent and dealing with crime was really dominated by men, and just how people, especially men, look at her throughout the movie, and things that are so subtle, but they're just shown and you can feel them through the filmmaking and the acting. It's not something that's just like told to you outright. That's just one of my favorite things about that movie. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors is so fun. It's sad that it's not going to move on. But yeah, I agree with Silence of the Lambs moving on. It's just, I think, the better movie overall.
Your big breaking TV.
And TV. All right, moving on to the next matchup, which is The Fly, the remake The Fly from the 80s versus Rosemary's Baby.
Ooh,
Baby
this one's
of Rosemary. And I think we're starting with Dylan.
Yeah, these were both ones I put on the list. So I'm very happy that one is going to advance, but I'm very sad that one is not, because they are both very good. The Fly was a recent discovery. I saw it for the first time last year, but I just think it was brilliant in terms of its physical horror, its gore, its use of practical effects. The commentary, and parallels to the AIDS crisis at the time in the 80s is super prevalent. Just the idea of someone sick and you don't really know why and how and if it's ever going to get better, and watching them slowly fade away and become almost indistinguishable, and the sadness of it, but also the fear amongst society that you would catch it too, and all the terrors that came with that crisis. That is really well depicted here. Rosemary's Baby is just a classic. I think there's so much influence to be taken from it, but I think it's great, but for me, The Fly is the one that I think is a little bit more, for me, just has that little sparkle that I don't even know if I haven't seen the original Fly either, so I don't know how much is taken from that original. But I think Rosemary's Baby, I've seen better versions, not better versions of it, but I've seen a lot of great movies to come out of the inspiration of that. I haven't seen a movie quite like The Fly since The Fly, so I'm gonna say The Fly. That's my way of getting out of very rock and hard place. But Rosemary's Baby is great acting, but The Fly for me is the one I slightly go with.
It's a lot like a lot of the monster remakes, is that the original is always kind of simple, and then the remake a lot of the times ends up fuller, and you can just get more. But yeah, Hunter.
So I did not get to watch Rosemary's Baby. I was going to start it today. Couldn't finish it because of time restraints. But I'm going to go with The Fly just because, one, I've seen it, but two, this is my favorite Cronenberg film. I love the body horror. I love how nasty and kind of grotesque it is, but I also like how underneath that it's a really good love story as well. It's a really good mixture of both this kind of grotesque monster movie, but also a really good love story with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, who is incredible in this movie, like they both are. So I'm going with The Fly.
Yeah, this is actually interesting because these are two of the movies that I do really need to rewatch that I've been given, because I do like them a lot. But it's one of those where I think upon rewatch I will be able to cement my opinions on them both. But I'm actually leaning Rosemary's Baby on this one, and I think the reason why is not because I don't think The Fly is a great movie, because I do think it is, but recently, especially going through because I know Rosemary's Baby is 60s, but going through 70s movies, horror movies, there's quite a few of them, Don't Look Now and The Brood and stuff, speaking of Cronenberg, that feel very slow burn. And I think Rosemary's Baby is one of those where it's just the psychology of it, the atmosphere, and just the slow burn of that horror where you're building to an ending, I think is becoming something that I'm really gaining a new appreciation for. A lot of Ty West's early films, like House of the Devil, that's just in the Innkeepers, that I'm just this is taking forever to get to a point, but I'm actually liking the process. So that's why I think I like Rosemary's Baby just a little more, and it's one that I'd be more interested to actually revisit, even though I'm gaining a new appreciation for Cronenberg as well. So I think The Fly would be another really fun revisit, because it's been a while since I've seen it, and I actually think both versions of The Fly are really good. Although I will never watch The Fly 2, because I read stuff about it, and there's too much animal cruelty in it for me. So, but The Fly is a really cool movie. But I'll go slightly Rosemary's Baby, although I think The Fly is going to win. Carrie.
Yeah, The Fly. I absolutely love that movie. For most of the reasons you guys talked about, I think it's just such an incredible story. It's one of these remakes that I think just adds so much to the original, and in a way that couldn't have been done, in the 50s when this movie, the original, came out. And it, like, the special effects are phenomenal. The acting is really fantastic. The themes it deals with, and it's just a great body horror. Rosemary's Baby, another phenomenal movie. I really love the book as well. And Mia Farrow is just like so fantastic in this movie. Just her acting is absolutely phenomenal. I'm just going to go off of personal preference because I think these are both just amazing films. I personally just prefer The Fly a little bit more. It's just a bit of a, I don't know, I just, for whatever reason, just prefer to watch it a little bit more.
Nice. Matt.
I saw The Fly when I was a kid, probably too young, because that's how we did it in the 80s and 90s, friends. That you just watched whatever, and then they made cartoons about R-rated movies that we got to watch. Anyway, but I watched The Fly when I was far too young. This is actually probably where I know Jeff Goldblum from first, but rewatching it recently, and I've seen it several times throughout my life, but I rewatched it, and I expected it to feel dated, and there were things that did feel dated, and I expected it to be kind of a slog. And sometimes when you revisit things that are from the 80s or earlier, sometimes it can feel like, gosh, this is not hitting me the way that it would have back then or whatever. I didn't feel that with The Fly. I felt every second of it. That movie is so good. Their performances are so good. Probably the best Jeff Goldblum. I mean, he's of course Ian Malcolm, and you got to love that. But probably his best performance ever is probably as Brenda Fly. I absolutely love that movie. I'm glad that it was on this list so that I could fall in love with it again, because I loved it when I was a kid. I'm not much of a body horror person. It's too hard. It makes me too uncomfortable sometimes. That's possibly one of the reasons Titan is not higher on my list. It's because of some of the body horror stuff. But this movie, it doesn't change how I feel about it. I absolutely love it. Rosemary's Baby is actually a movie that I probably had seen at some point, or at least had seen enough of it to feel like I had seen it. I knew about it, but I watched it this time either for the first time or for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure. And the thing that struck me is, it's very good. It's a very, very good movie. The thing that struck me is it does not feel like it's from the 60s. It feels very modern, which is interesting. It feels I don't want to say it feels timeless, because it does have an age to it. Like, you can feel it in an era, but there's something about it that does feel far more modern than it is, which I really dig. It was very good. There was a lot of really great horror. Mia Farrow was great. Poor Mia Farrow, who just can't stop being connected to just garbage people. It just really sucks. But in the movie and in real life. I really, really enjoyed Rosemary's Baby. However, The Fly is just it's classic to me. I absolutely love that movie, so it's gonna get my vote.
All right. I think that was it. So we're gonna move on. The Fly. Also, if you love Gina Davis and what's his face, Jeff Goldblum, check out Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, I didn't mention Gina Davis, but she's incredible in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's fun. She's sexy. She's smart. Everything about her character is just so good, and she is incredible in it. She was just incredible at that time. She was just an incredible actress.
Yeah,
but I really love her.
All right, moving on to the next one, which is The Invisible Man, the remake, versus Eraserhead, dude. Oh
So
my
different.
God, this matchup
different.
is
Ugh.
very, very different and very, very interesting. And this is tough for some of us. And I think we're starting with Hunter.
I've not seen Eraserhead. Another one that I will watch eventually. I just haven't had time to watch it from the last time it was on the list like this. So I'm going The Invisible Man, but I really love this remake of The Invisible Man. It takes what was great about the original and updates it, but makes it more about, instead of focusing on the Invisible Man himself, focusing on the victims of, said Invisible Man. And this time, it deals with, abuse in a way that is it's very tough to watch sometimes, but it's a great way to do it without making general audiences feel too creeped out and too uncomfortable to go back and rewatch it. Because the great thing about this movie is you can go back and rewatch it multiple times and catch new stuff every single time that maybe you didn't notice before. So I'm going The Invisible Man.
Yeah, this is insanely tough because I love both of these movies so much for different reasons. I mean, I'm a huge David Lynch fan, but also a huge Lee Winnell fan now. And I just think like they're both incredible visionaries. I mean, I like David Lynch more just because he's had a longer span. But I mean, Lee Winnell coming out with the Wolfman. This guy can create like his own Universal monster universe, and I think everyone would just love it if the Wolfman is really good. Eraserhead is insane. We talked about Skinamarink and Mad God and stuff, and it's like, if you open someone's brain, what would it look like? And David Lynch's weird brain is on display here, and his like fear of becoming a parent and just like the manifestation of that turned into just a lot of like strange occurrences, characters acting weird, a lady in a radiator with like big cheeks stepping on like little like sperm creatures. It's a very odd movie, but it's also very scary and very unsettling, and I love it. The Invisible Man is it's just one of those where I love what it does as far as giving us a look at abuse, not just the abuse that you see in like the opening scene as far as like her fear of him and then him chasing her down when she goes to escape, but then just that pervasive fear that's just throughout the rest of the movie is just felt by this character, and to see her like growth is just super incredible and inspiring. But then just that feeling that she gets even when there's no that of like Invisible Man around, you still feel that like her fear of just going to the mailbox. It always sticks with her, and the fact that you don't know if he's there or not, it almost doesn't matter because he's able to be there in her mind, because he's caused that much damage to her. It's such a brilliant movie, and in the age of COVID, came out right before COVID went into full force. It was one of the last movies I saw in the theater then. And then I was like, it's the perfect time for you guys, when you're not like releasing stuff, to nominate this for Best Picture because it deserves it. And they're like, no, we're gonna like mix 2020 and 2021 and just 2019, we'll just mix a bunch of years together and find some very slow dramas that we can. It's like, guys, you have the perfect opportunity here, and they just total letdown. Elizabeth Moss could have got an acting nomination too. I think Invisible Man's going to win this, so I'm going to give a slight nod to Eraserhead because I think it is the more. It also looks beautiful with the black and white cinematography in the 1970s, and yeah, I'll go slightly Eraserhead, but it's very close. Carrie.
Yeah, The Invisible Man. Like you guys said, it's just an absolutely brilliant film. It's so terrifying. I mean, the tension that Lee Winnell pulls off, like, I think so far this is his best movie that he's done. And like you said, Hunter, like coming at this from Elizabeth Moss's character's perspective is just so brilliant. And it's one of the things Chad and I, and Hunter too. Hunter, I don't know if you watched Hollow Man too. Chad and I just
I have not watched Hollow Man yet.
Okay.
So
Chad and I
bad.
just watched the original Invisible Man, which is fine. It's not my favorite of the Universal monsters. And we watched Hollow Man, which is the 90s or early 2000s.
I think it's right at 2000.
Yeah. Kevin Bacon, Invisible Man story. And I think the thing that bothered both Chad and I about that movie is like Kevin Bacon starts off as this, he's kind of a creep and a jerk, and then he just gets worse and worse. But like it's just everything he does is so horrible. And like I love that this movie, we start off, we know the Invisible Man is a bad man. We know that, and we get to see it, like Hunter said, from his victim, from the other perspective. Yeah. And I love the character growth we see in Elizabeth Moss, her character. And the scares are just phenomenal. I mean, Leigh Whannell just knows how to do those scares so well. So it was so great to see just a really scary movie that also has like a really just like complex emotional message. Eraserhead is like terrifying for different reasons. It makes me so like, this is a little bit of a theme with me. It just makes me so uncomfortable. It's very difficult for me to watch it. I respect it as a movie, but I just don't enjoy the viewing experience. I don't know if you're really meant to. So I'm going to go with The Invisible Man.
Definitely. Matt.
Okay, so I watched Eraserhead for the first time a couple years ago when I was doing my TikTok alphabet challenge thing, and I was only watching movies I had never seen, and I watched Eraserhead, and and I said on that, like, I don't know what the fuck I just watched. It was that was either a masterpiece or horrible. I can't tell. This movie works for me, and really the only way it works for me is if it is a metaphor for a parental anxiety, for anxiety about becoming a parent, anxiety about keeping your child safe, about what's happening with your child. As a parent, those themes, if it is that, work really well for me. And it is that, because once an artist hands over his art or their art, they are no longer in charge of what it means. I am. So that's true. Once they hand it over, the interpretation is entirely up to the viewer. So for me, this movie is about being afraid of parental anxiety, and in that way, it does work for me. I knew this was going to be hard to watch, and there are parts of it that are hard. There's some of it that it's very, very interesting, and like there's a lot of it that's funny. It kind of runs the gamut. The infanticide in it is difficult for me to it makes this movie more difficult to enjoy. But if I look at it as a metaphor for other things, like for as I mentioned, as the metaphor for parental anxiety, I can overlook it as a metaphor rather than what happens. And but I rewatched it for this, and I do think that it is on the masterpiece side, although I don't love this movie. But if I think about it as that metaphor, it does work. It does work for me. Invisible Man, I feel the same and the opposite of Hunter on this, on Invisible Man, because I do think that what it does, going from the original Universal Monster movie, how it translates over is incredible. But I actually think the ways that it's different is what makes it incredible, because the original Invisible Man is a comedy, basically. And that's why I really like it. It's not my favorite of the Universal Monster movies, but I do think that it is underrated, because if you look at it as more of a comedy than a horror movie, it works a lot better. This movie, they throw that out, and it's like they were like, we don't need to remake that movie. We need to make our own movie based on that idea. And that's what really works with this. One of my favorite things about this movie is the way the camera will sit on a blank space.
Mm-hmm.
And you're almost, as the audience, you are looking
Second guessing
for
yourself.
something. You're looking for something to happen. You're looking for something to move. And nothing moves. Nothing happens. But you know there's someone there. And that is the most terrifying thing. That is, for me, that's where the horror really happens in this movie. I know there's somebody standing there. I can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's scary. So that's that. I love the way that they do that. That camera work is incredible. There's also a lot of tension, and as a true crime person, the idea that you can be seen as a murderer and the evidence points to you being a murderer and you not being able to provide a reasonable defense to yourself also scares the shit out of me. So that whole thing sucks. Plus, she loses her sister in that moment and has to deal with the thing.
That scene is hard to watch.
So hard. It's so well executed.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it just pops into her hand and even she doesn't understand what's happening right now for a second. Oh man, that scene is so hard. Anyway, it's a great film. There are certain parts that are hard to watch for good reasons, or parts that are hard to watch for bad reasons. When the girl thinks she hit her, that is almost too hard to stomach for me a little bit, and I think that might just be a parent thing. I don't know, but that almost borders into not enjoyable for me. But anyway, so this is kind of hard because I think they're both really great movies. I think I'm gonna have to go with the one that I actually watch more often than I realize. I was thinking back, and I've actually watched it a lot, which is Invisible Man. I think I'm gonna have to go with Invisible Man. I thought I might send it over to Dylan to decide, but I think I'm gonna have to go with Invisible Man.
Totally, Dylan.
Either way, I would have decided that as well. I think Invisible Man, there's that personal connection because it was the last movie I saw before COVID, similarly to what Chad said. So it was kind of like the entire time during COVID, I was just waiting and longing to get back, and that was the memory I had, which really stuck with me, which was really beautiful. And then my first movie back was Nomadland, so it was a kind of real good bookend of like, you know, the time period that had happened. Eraserhead's great though. I think it's fantastic. It does play into the anxieties of being a father, but it also plays into the anxieties of moving to a big city. Because if you know David Lynch, he lived in Montana, moved to the city. I think when he was younger, you know, when he wanted to get a start, people were like, you got to move to the city. You gotta start somewhere, and he hated it. And I think that really is also reflected in this film really well. The idea of like the sounds constantly festering in every scene. I think that is also a great, you know, thing to take from the film as well. But as Matt and Chad and Carrie and everyone have hit on, you know, the idea of that anxiety of being a parent, and you know, when you finally see the wrapping come off and then it just falls apart, it's like, oh, it's heart-wrenching. And then just watching him try to put it back together, but he can't. I've always wondered what color the alien was, and I asked Chad and Matt the other night, and they said it was some sort of brown, like ET-ish. So yeah, I'm gonna roll with that. But I just think it's a really cool movie. But for me, The Invisible Man just like, hits more of that appeal to rewatch, which, you know, that shouldn't be a film's only merit. But when deciding which one I like more, for me, it's always going to be the one that I want to spend more time with. Whereas Eraserhead, I want to spend more time talking about. Whereas Invisible Man, I actually just want to like watch. You know, if that makes sense. So I'll go Invisible Man here.
Yeah, I love the constant themes that David Lynch has throughout all his stuff. Like you talked about, like city stuff, where it's like the electricity sounds and like industrial machines and stuff like that throughout like all of his movies. So, you know, I love that. Yeah, thank you guys for deciding for me, because that was such a tough matchup. And The Invisible Man moves on. Brilliant movie. We love it to death.
This is irrelevant, but my last movie in the theater was Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and my first movie back was New Mutants.
Mine was The Hunt. The last one was The Hunt I saw in theaters.
Nice. All right, moving on to the next matchup, which is Alien versus Psycho.
No.
This one seems hard, but it's pretty easy for me. But
this one's probably the roughest for me.
this is rough, and I'm starting with it. Oh man, two classics. Psycho changed the game. Psycho gave me Halloween and Scream and just everything else. But Alien is also a great slasher. That's just one of a kind. They're both so good and so brilliant. I love the game changing, like, twist in Psycho, like midway through. So unexpected, so cool. Alfred Hitchcock's the master of suspense and just does that so well, and just really crushed that movie. I love it more every time I watch it. Same with Alien. Alien is packed with so much metaphor and everything, including in addition to just being a brilliant like movie that you could watch, that you could just watch on like a base level of, this is really cool, chest burster, whoa, what the hell, that's crazy, and then seeing like the Ripley being like the only one that is smart enough to survive, like she told them not to bring it in, and stuff like that. And then seeing her save the cat. I love Jonesy, probably best movie cat. Well, that or Thackeray Banks, it's one of the two. But yeah, I'll go Alien just slightly, because I think it might be slightly the better movie, but that's so hard to say. They're both so different, but also so similar, and I wouldn't be surprised if either went for it. But I'll go Alien just slightly. Carrie.
Yeah, Alien, one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite of the Alien franchise. Just love all of the characters in this movie, and Jonesy. And Psycho is obviously like such a classic, so terrifying. My personal favorite though, and the one I enjoy more, is Alien, so I'm gonna go with that.
Nice. Matt.
Love this because Alien is my second favorite horror movie. So I love that it's getting the love. It's just, I love Psycho. I think it's a really great movie. And through watching it for this, I purchased all the all four movies in a pack, and watched the other three for the first time. And that series is just so good. I really love the whole series. Psycho itself, the first one, is a masterpiece. It is a classic. It's just Alien is so much scarier to me. It's scary. It's well made. It's to me, it's my favorite of the Alien franchise. I know a lot of people love Aliens more. Not me. Alien is where it's at for me. There's just so many iconic things, and of course, Jonesy is one of the two survivors. So you got to love that. And just that ending, like it's similar to Jaws in that you don't see the alien a lot in the movie, and then once you get to that point, that chase, it's so kind of freaky and almost, it's weird because it's set in space, but it's almost the setting almost feels realistic, and this alien is the opposite. Like it feels so, it does not feel like anything you've ever seen. And I mean, now it does because we know what the xenomorph looks like, but for that time, it's like that's something we've never experienced, and it feels so foreign to us, which makes it so much scarier to me. And so yeah, Alien is definitely gonna go on for me because it's a masterpiece in my book.
Totally. Dylan.
Yeah, it's fun because I just rewatch all the Alien films for the new one coming out. So like I've come around to even love Alien more and more every time I rewatch it. And this is the first time I finally went to that like 5-star bump. I was like, yeah, it's a masterpiece. It's through and through one of the best films of its kind ever made. Though I do have another favorite of the franchise, but we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about these movies. Psycho, great. I love it. I put it on this list. I think it is so suspenseful, so expertly crafted. I know a lot of people don't like the big like dump at the end of like exposition, not really exposition, but like that long drawn out monologue at the end. Personally, I think it's earned so much from its adrenaline rush to that point to where it's like, I bet in the theater it was kind of nice to just kind of chill and like breathe for a second, and then to kind of give us that last zinger at the end. I didn't mind it, but I can see on rewatch how it's not necessarily everyone's favorite part. But like for the film to like kind of have an okay ending after so much greatness before it, I think is better than like, you know, just taking forever and ever and ever to get on with it, and then like a great scene at the end, but it's like we had to wait all this time for it. Not a slow burn, but the opposite, where it's just like it's only good for its ending. This one is the kind of opposite. So I love Psycho. It's been one of my favorite films of all time, so I'm gonna go with Psycho, but I do appreciate Alien. I think it's great. I'm sure it's gonna advance. It already has with your 3 votes, but I do think Psycho is an all-timer for me, so I'm gonna go Psycho.
Hey, you've been teasing you have a new favorite Alien for a while now. When are you going to reveal that nonsense?
You can look at my letterbox, but it's I'll do like a video on TikTok at some point. I'm not going to do a channel ranking because I just that opens up a lot of hate. But TikTok, I'll probably put one on TikTok at some point. But
I think I know what it is. Hunter.
All right, so I really love Psycho. I think just the way that it not only ushered in the slasher genre, because it was the first one to, you know, show us from the killer's point of view. We see who the killer is, and it's got a big reveal at the end. I think Janet Leigh is incredible. For the limited screen time we have her, and it is iconic, but anyone who knows me knows how much I love Alien. It is that one like claustrophobic one setting that I love so much in horror, and the fact that the ship is very small, but it feels like it goes on endless because of how dark it is, and you don't know what area you're in. You don't know, like, there's so many twists and turns, and the xenomorph is so, you know, it's done so well and such iconic scenes. And you got, you know, Ripley being one of the best final girls out there. I'm going with Alien as well.
All right. Alien is moving on. And then the next matchup is Train to Busan versus The Bride of Frankenstein.
couldn't be more
Interesting.
different.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. Right. All right. So Carrie starts this one.
Okay. Train to Busan, that is like in a world where I think we're all sick, especially at this time, we were all sick and still probably are all sick of zombie movies and zombie TV and content. This movie, it just finds a way to make zombies new and refreshing, and at the heart of it is a really emotional story about a father and daughter. And it winds up being, it's a zombie movie, but it's like one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking horror movies ever. The Bride of Frankenstein is obviously such a classic, but it's one that it's such a classic, but I have to give it to Train to Busan just because that movie, I think, just hits me so much more. It hits me harder emotionally. Yeah.
Definitely. Matt.
I don't like where the tide is turning. I watched Train to Busan for this for the first time, and it was really good. I really, really liked it. It was actually the first one I watched for this, so it was actually a few months ago. So I tried to remember everything about it, but I do remember thinking that, being like, "Oh, it was worth the hype." Everyone was talking about when it first came out, like when it came out and everybody was just in love with it. And I watched it, I was like, "Oh, this is definitely worth the hype." Bride of Frankenstein's my favorite Universal monster movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies. There is a absolute beauty in going from the movie about, and Dylan even referenced it when he was reviewing Frankenstein with my review of it, which is that it's the classic tale of a monster who created a man. And this movie goes even further than that, with like there's a new monster and they are creating this person, and then by the end it questions, should they even be alive? And I don't know, I just really, really love this movie. I love that the woman who plays Mary Shelley in the beginning plays the bride at the end. It's my favorite. She is so dynamic as the bride, every shot of her in that movie is just incredible. Like you just fall in love with her. She's so strong and fierce and amazing. And she doesn't, like, when she rejects Frankenstein and he cries and he's like, we shouldn't be alive. Like, he realizes, like, what have we done to this person? Because this time he's a little bit involved in it. Like, he's like, all right, this is fine. He's a little bit involved in it. And then so when he realizes that she doesn't want to be there, and he's like, oh my God, and he sheds a tear for the first time. It's so beautiful. I absolutely love the scene. Plus the scene with the hermit where he teaches him to smoke and drink wine and eat is something I really love. So anyway, I love that movie. For me, it's Bride of Frankenstein. That's where I'm going.
Nice. Dylan.
Yeah, I love the classic Universal vibe. Like, it's just such a cozy time of year to, like, just, you know, if you don't want something that's like too, like, either jump scary or like really unsettling, you can watch something that's like very classic and just fits the vibes really well, which, like, Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein are both very haunting, but for me it's like the vibes are why I love going to those films of this time of year. I just love turning off the lights and just immersing myself in that. I actually watched this for the first time because Matt was very generous and gave me a little digital code, but I did find that I preferred the first one to it, but I do think it's like one of those like neck and neck things. Like, I think you wouldn't be it's like the aliens conversation. Like, I get why some people say Frankenstein, I get why people say Bride. It's one of the best sequels, but it also, like, I could see why you would prefer the original. I prefer the original, but it's also one I've sat with more time. But again, not talking about the other films, just talking about this one. But as a sequel, it's really great and how it advances all the themes and plots of Frankenstein. And Elsa Lancaster, yeah, like, just so great. We all just talked about her, or at least Matt, Chad, and I, as like the nurse who reminds Charles Lawton to take his sips of hot chocolate during the court case and witness for the prosecution. She's great in that too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of her. But for me, Train to Busan is the quintessential zombie movie, and I love zombie movies. I loved The Walking Dead until it got bad, until they sent Rick away. But like, some people would argue it got bad even before that, but I stuck with it a little longer. But yeah, I think this is like doing the modern zombie genre the best it's been. Personally, I again am a very new, like, birthed horror fan, so like I still have a lot of ways to go, but for me this is my favorite zombie movie, so I'm gonna go Train to Busan. It was the one I put on this list because I love it. It's one I'm consistently thrilled by. So but I do really like the fact that Matt introduced me to Bride of Frankenstein because it's great.
I forgot to mention, but I did want to mention the lighting in Bride of Frankenstein is really, really incredible. Yeah. That scene at the beginning when he's in the water and he's coming out from the shadows is just
it looks so good for the time too. Yeah. That and the original are just so revolutionary. Yeah.
Nice. Hunter.
All right, so I know a lot of people are tired of this. I have not seen The Bride of Frankenstein. It is one that, like, is, you know, adding up on my list as well of like must see movies, because I do love the original one as well. I love the original Frankenstein. But I just watched Train to Busan today, like a few hours ago, and I'm with Dylan. This is my favorite zombie movie of all time, just on one watch, because of how the zombies are the main threat. But what's great about this movie, and like a lot of other zombie movies, is that you have the people who are trapped in the train being the real villains. Because what level will you go to protect yourself over protecting others, which is our main hero. You know, he's always telling his daughter, you know, why are you so good? Like, why are you helping these people? And then at the end, it's that ultimate sacrifice that he makes for his daughter when he sees how good of a person that he made his daughter to be. And it's that ultimate sacrifice that I really loved. It teared up at it. So I'm going with Train to Busan.
All right. While Train to Busan is not my favorite zombie movie, because we still have the entire George Romero Dead trilogy, and we also have Shaun of the Dead.
I was going to say Shaun of the Dead, I would say is my favorite zombie movie, but like favorite like zombie, like of this ilk. Like that's like a zombie comedy for me, but I wanted to clarify that because as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, I know Chad's going to point that out. So I just,
Fair. Well, yeah. I mean, just the obvious. It just was re-released. Anyways, Train to Busan rules. I love it a lot because of the depth that it has, as well as just wicked awesome freaking sequences of zombie attacking and stuff. While I love slow zombies more, this is a great way to do fast zombies. Bride of Frankenstein is a brilliant movie. I do think it probably is the greatest Universal monster movie, and I think it's just brilliant. I'm still gonna slightly go Train to Busan just because I like Carrie said, I think it gives me more emotions and stuff like that.
4-1. This is madness.
This is how I felt the whole left side, Matt. Now you know how I feel.
All right, now we're moving on to Evil Dead 2 versus, and this is tough. Jaws.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Oh.
And we're starting with who?
Me.
Matt.
Good luck. This is tough.
I'm pretty sure that I put both of these on this list
You
also. Okay, Evil Dead 2 has been in my top 5 favorite movies for a very, very long time. Although I think things are shifting for me, and if I reevaluated it, it might not be in there anymore, but it's still a movie that I absolutely adore. This is Looney Tunes, but rated R. Like that's its whole. That's the thing. It's the Three Stooges, but with dead people. It's just so funny. It has my favorite sequence in film, which is when he is strapping up, getting this chainsaw on, sawing off the shotgun, groovy, all that. That's like my favorite sequence in all of film. I absolutely love that movie. Jaws is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest films ever made, let alone horror films, let alone anything. Like it's just an absolute masterpiece. I watched this for, I believe, on the 4th of July this year, and I often do.
Perfect.
But I watch it on. I watch it fairly frequently. This, unlike Psycho, is not one where I just love the sequels also. But
yeah.
But I absolutely love this movie. It's so well cast. It's so well written. It's so well directed. It's incredible. It's also a slasher movie. It just happened. The murderer happens to be a shark, and it's just an incredible movie. Even though Evil Dead 2 is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, I'm gonna put Jaws. I'm gonna advance Jaws for my vote. So,
Wow.
Definitely Dylan.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I didn't put Jaws on because I knew you would, and Jaws is a top 16 horror film for me. It's probably a top 5 horror film for me. It honestly might be my favorite horror film because I always forget it's a horror film. Not to say it's not, but I always just like it's almost in its own existence. So yeah, I'm going Jaws here. I like Evil Dead 2 a lot, but like Jaws for me is just like one of my all-time favorite movies. It's my favorite director, so I'm gonna champion it. Though I do think it's not a done deal that's gonna win this whole bracket. I think there's some great picks also on the bracket, but I think it's gonna be hard to beat Jaws for at least a few rounds. But yeah, Jaws.
Totally, Hunter.
We've talked about this before. Jaws is probably in my top 2 favorite Spielberg movies. It's either that or Jurassic Park. I know that's the obvious answers, but
that's the same for me. That's my top 2.
it alternates. Jaws is so good. It's adventure. It's got great music. It's got a great cast. But I am going to champion Evil Dead 2 because I absolutely love it. It was the one movie that me and my dad watched constantly. Like, he showed me this franchise. He loves this franchise. Bruce Campbell is incredible. It's got great physical comedy. It's one of my favorite horror comedies. So I'm going Evil Dead 2.
I do just want to real quick, because I forgot to say this. So when I went to Comic-Con once, Bruce Campbell was there, and I went through and I got his autograph, and my friend was behind me. And so I stepped away and walked over, and then my friend was up there doing it, and he was talking to him. He's like, "So where you work?" And we worked at the same place. So Bruce Campbell points at me and says, "So you must know that bum over there." And it's the greatest moment of my life that Bruce Campbell called me a bum.
That's awesome.
Oh wow,
that's amazing. E.T.'s my favorite Spielberg, because since we're all doing it.
Samesies.
But these two were in my like top 64 movies. I love both of these movies so much. for different reasons. They're both horror films. They're both great horror films, and they're just different. And they're great in different ways. And I love the filmmaking in both. You know, I think that's the two of the greatest films ever made as far as like their own styles and what the filmmakers brought to it. And Jaws being like the first like summer blockbuster, and just the way they, you know, use the shark so limited, and it's more about building the characters. And you know, it got a different kind of meaning after COVID with the whole, you know, mayor being problematic kind of thing, and just ignoring the warning signs. And then you have just great scenes like in the boat when they're just talking about, you know, everything. And then Evil Dead 2 is just the way it's shot. Just, it's one of the greatest horror movies, one of the greatest comedies. It's just one that you throw on and just for 90 minutes or 80 minutes or whatever, you're just like, I'm just watching the greatest thing I've ever seen. Both are great. I'm gonna go Evil Dead 2 as well. Carrie.
Yeah, I love Evil Dead 2. Obviously, like one of the best horror comedies ever, but Jaws is Jaws, and I think it's such an amazing movie, and I could just rewatch that over and over again. So I'm going Jaws.
All right. So I believe that's Jaws, right?
Yep, 3-2.
All right. Cool. I was surprised it was 3. I thought it was just going to be me, Evil Dead 2. All right. The next matchup is maybe not as tough. Get Out versus 10 Cloverfield Lane. I don't think this will be as tough, but we'll see.
Yeah. I'm first, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not as tough. I put both these on the list. It was this one of the carryovers that Matt and I had. Was Get Out one of them or no?
Get Out was one of them.
Yeah, it's Get Out, and then I think it's one in the next matchup because we haven't run into them yet. The crossovers, because there's 2. But yeah, Get Out is one that I was like, yeah, I obviously put it on the list as one of the best horror movies of the last 10 years or whatever. But I'll save some of my thoughts on Get Out in the next matchup because I have a certain hot take, maybe. Though Get Out is certainly better than 10 Cloverfield Lane. I put 10 Cloverfield Lane on there because I think it's just such a cool way to make a franchise without needing it to connect. It's like almost this anthology-like thing where it's set in the same universe, but it's a totally different vibes, character, story. I just really appreciate what it did, and I think you know, they couldn't replicate it a third time necessarily, but I do think it was just a very inventive way to kind of, you know, get people to see your kind of small close quarters thriller. You know, you put the Cloverfield name on it, people go see it, but it also doesn't need to necessarily be tied to all the mythology in the way that it feels shoehorned in. So I really like it. I think John Goodman's performance in that thing is terrifyingly good. And Get Out, everyone said everything that needs to be said about Get Out everywhere you look on the internet. It's one of the most talked about movies of all time, so I'm not going to get into what makes it great. I'm sure you all will, but yeah, Get Out is my pick. But 10 Cloverfield Lane, were real surprised when I saw it, and just one that I like to kind of champion, even though it's not. It's probably my 16 of 16, if that makes sense.
Yep. Hunter.
So I actually watched 10 Cloverfield Lane for the first time for this bracket, and was surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie. John Goodman is terrifying. I love one location horror, so taking place in this bunker where you have no idea what's going on in the outside world is terrifying to me. But I mean, Get Out is almost a perfect horror movie for me, from the writing to the comedy to the social commentary to the twists and the turns, and like you're always guessing like what's going to go on next. TS motherfucking A, you know, shit is one of my favorite lines, so Get Out is for me as well.
Yeah, I'm also picking Get Out. It's like one of those perfect movies that just came out of nowhere, surprised everyone, and you rewatch it, you know, you get so much more every single time, and it's just so layered and brilliant. And we've covered it on Welcome to Prime Time, so more of our thoughts there. I think I need to bring that video actually to this channel because I think it's on the old channel. However, 10 Cloverfield Lane, I don't like the original Cloverfield that much, and I think this one's kind of brilliant. I love the isolation. I just love what Dan Trachtenberg was able to bring to it. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Goodman, and also John Gallagher Jr., who's also fantastic.
So good,
is just so good. All 3 of them are just brilliant. Make that a really brilliant film. But yeah, it's no Get Out, unfortunately. Carrie.
Yeah, like everyone has been saying, 10 Cloverfield Lane is great, but Get Out is just on a completely different level. So I'm going Get Out.
Totally. Matt.
10 Cloverfield Lane is my favorite of the Cloverfield movies also, Chad. It's John Goodman is one of my favorite actors, and a villain who seems nice and who is almost fatherly is far more terrifying to me than someone who's openly menacing. And so that really works. His performance is so good. John Gallagher Jr. If you didn't mention him, I was going to. He's so good. He's in another really great horror movie called Hush, and we've been talking about that a lot lately. But he's great. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's amazing. It's just a really good movie. Get Out is Get Out. It's so good. It's amazing. It has a lot to say, and it's scary and funny, and has one of the best villain turns villain reveals in all of cinema. So I go Get Out.
Perfect. All right. So now the last matchup is Nope versus Hereditary. All right.
No.
Now we're starting with Hunter.
Can I just ask really quick, Matt, which one was the other one we were aligned on? Because I put both these on. Which one did you put on?
Hereditary.
Okay, so that's what I thought. Okay, I was just curious.
Hereditary is fantastic. Toni Collette is incredible. Gives a great performance. I love slow burn horror, and this is one that got me into the slow burn horror because before that, I didn't know if I had the mental capacity of watching a movie this long that was slow. But then I watched it in the theaters, absolutely loved it. I got to go with Nope, though, because not only does it give me that Jaws feeling of like this big adventure, I love the characters, I love the actors. Jordan Peele is one of my favorite horror directors working today. It's got really good commentary. It's got really good, it talks about mistreatment of animals and like what that can do if not looked at in a completely different way. I love the reveal of the alien and how great and scary it looks. It has great moments. It's really, really funny. So I'm going with Nope.
Yeah, I can already tell this matchup is not going to go my way. It's going to be very disappointing for me, but it's not my episode. That's fine. I'll get Hereditary to win something else probably. I adore Hereditary. I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made. Not that Nope isn't. I think Nope is also very, very good. I think they're slightly two different levels. I think Hereditary is up there with Get Out for me, and Nope is I think just a slighter tier down, and then Us is just a little bit slighter below that. I think Nope is the great middle one there, but it does improve every single time I watch it. I think it's also brilliant, but Hereditary is just like a personal one that I just adored ever since I first saw it. Just thought it was a masterpiece, but so is Nope. So I understand if it wins, it's because it's brilliant. Carrie.
I think Hereditary is going to win this one.
I love both of these movies a lot, and I have developed a new appreciation for Nope after listening to Dead Meat Podcast did an in-depth analysis of it, and there were just so many things I hadn't caught on to and realized, and it's just made me love this movie even more. I think I have to give it to Hereditary, though.
Oh, okay.
I know that's surprising to chat because I find Hereditary very hard to watch for obvious reasons. But it is like one, we saw it in theaters, and it was just one of the scariest movie theater experiences I had since probably since I was like a teenager. Just like that, like most horror movies just don't. It's hard to scare me now, to that point where I'm like kind of hiding behind my eyes, and this Hereditary did it for me. So I think I have to give it to it for that.
Nice, Matt.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief because my heart out is soon. But let me say that I almost walked out of Hereditary when the phone poll happened. When the phone poll happened, and then the reaction afterward happened, I said in my mind, I don't like the way this movie makes me feel, and I almost left. However, I'm glad I stayed because this is on the fast track to becoming one of my absolute favorite horror movies of all time.
Wow.
I absolutely love this movie. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it a little bit more. I think that it does some things that we've never seen, and the performances top to bottom are just incredible. Anne O'Dowd is so good, and that I love seeing her in things. But Toni Collette, Oscar for Toni, she should have been nominated for this
100%.
movie. Nope, I do like Nope a lot, but it is my least favorite of Jordan Peele. So that's why.
Oh.
So for me, like, and that's not like by a large margin. I think that Us and Nope are pretty close, but really far below Get Out for me. But Hereditary is just so good. It's a 5-star for me. I have to give it to Hereditary.
Wow, that's unexpected. All right, Mr. Hot Take, let's hear it.
Okay, I'll say right now, these two movies, I talked about Jaws, Titan, Black Swan being top 5. These are also in my top 5. So this matchup, whatever randomizer Chad stumbled upon that day, that randomizer me. Because this is the worst matchup, and I knew this was going to be the last matchup because I saw your list, and I was like, how am I going to decide between two of the best movies the last few years? Yeah. My hot take is that I think Nope is Jordan Peele's best movie. I think with more rewatches, I have come to find so many little nuggets of things that I think is so fascinating. The animal everything it has to say about animals and what we do with like spectacle and how we abuse spectacle and abuse other things as spectacle is so fascinating. Tying it into the Gordy stuff, it didn't make sense to me the first time, and then more I've seen it, I'm like, oh my god, it's just the most perfect subplot to emphasize the overall themes of it. I just love everything it has to say, also tying into all the black stuff and the black experience that Jordan Peele has really nailed with Get Out, Us, and this. But also just a very good, as Hunter said, adventure, the way it's shot, the way it has that rousing kind of almost Western feel at the end with like everyone riding the horses and Jean Jacket. I love how it's during the day, that big action set piece, so you can like see everything clear. It doesn't hide behind its visual effects. It embraces them. It embraces practical like filmmaking as opposed to digital, like with the IMAX cameras, like the cranking of the camera. Like I love it.
Michael Wincott is incredible, by the way.
Michael Wincott, yes, the purple people eater. Like, but also Hereditary is also one of the most like just visionary, amazing works of the last few years. That telephone pole sequence literally had me shaking in the seat. Like my mom had to like calm me down. I was like like convulsing. It's so difficult, but I do think at the end of the day, Nope gets just so much better and better every time I watch it. Hereditary does too, but not at the surprising, alarming rate as Nope, to where like I think Nope is better than Get Out at this point, and I think it's going to go even higher. So because Hereditary is moving on, I'm very happy with that. I will give my vote to Nope because it doesn't matter, but I do think, every vote matters. But don't get the wrong message. But I do want to champion Nope because it is so good. If these two were in the finals, it would be a tough matchup. The fact that one of these has to fall in the first round sucks. But it's practically a tie for me. 51% Nope, 49% Hereditary for me. That's how I'm gonna split my vote margins there. So I'm gonna go Nope, but it doesn't matter because Hereditary is making it through, and I hope it goes far. So.
Wow, that was unexpected for me because I don't know. I feel like a lot of people don't talk up Hereditary like I do, but also
again, I love
Nope
Hereditary.
is super underrated too. So
yeah, both two great movies. Yeah.
We have to fast check this because I have 10 minutes.
Yeah. We speed around these, right?
Yeah.
Just saying the name of the movie.
Now, just say the name of the movie, like Carrie said, and we'll find out a winner. All right.
Here we go.
So now, we'll start at the top. Hunter, Scream or Dr. Sleep?
Scream.
I'll go Scream. Carrie.
Dr. Sleep.
Scream.
Matt.
Scream.
Dylan.
Scream.
All right. Scream moves on. Now, the others, Jennifer's Body. I'll go Jennifer's Body. Carrie.
The others.
The others.
Jennifer's Body.
Jennifer's Body.
Jennifer's Body moves on. Halloween, Happy Death Day, Carrie.
Halloween.
Just keep going. Just go.
Sorry,
in order. Sorry.
I was shocked by the last.
Matt.
I said Halloween.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
that was
Dylan.
me. Halloween.
Halloween.
All right. Faculty, Black Swan. Matt.
Black Swan.
Dylan.
Black Swan.
Hunter.
The Faculty.
Black Swan, Carrie.
Black Swan.
Black Swan moves on. All right, see how easy that was? Look. All right, now let's go on to the other side. The Silence of the Lambs, The Fly, Dylan.
The Fly.
Silence of the
okay.
Lambs.
The Silence of the Lambs, Carrie.
The Silence of the Lambs.
Matt.
The Silence of the Lambs, I guess. It's pretty up in the air for me, honestly.
Okay. Invisible Man, Alien, Hunter.
The Invisible Man.
I'll go Invisible Man 2 as actually Carrie.
Alien.
Alien.
Matt. Dylan.
I'm sorry, Invisible Man. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Wow.
I like it more. I'm sorry.
Train to Busan, Jaws. I think it's me. I'll go Jaws.
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 Okay. All right. Get Out, Hereditary. Well, might say by Hereditary now. Carrie.
Get Out.
Hereditary.
Because I went nope last time, I'll go Hereditary this time. Hereditary.
Hunter.
Get Out.
Also go Hereditary. Hereditary. moves
Wow.
on. All right. And then. All right. So now we have Scream versus Jennifer's Body. Hunter.
Scream.
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 I was going to say, Jennifer's Body does that. Yeah, Scream.
I would have voted Jennifer's Body, but I know it's 4-1. It's fine. I would have voted Troll 2 there too.
Halloween and Black Swan. Halloween.
Halloween.
Oh, sorry, Halloween.
It's fine. Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
gonna continue being the contrarian just because it's one of my top 5 horror movies. I will go Black Swan, but
Halloween.
All right. So now we have The Silence of the Lambs, The Invisible Man, 2 feminist movies. All right. Cool.
Yep.
Carrie. Starting Carrie.
The Silence of the Lambs.
Matt.
Silence of the Lambs. I'm
Dylan.
so upset.
The Invisible Man.
Hunter.
The Invisible Man.
I'm gonna do the upset. I'm gonna do Invisible Man.
It's clearly
all
not
right.
an upset. It's already upset something.
It's a double
All right.
upset.
Jaws, Hereditary. Matt.
Hereditary.
Dylan.
Hereditary.
What? Okay.
Hereditary.
Sorry. Okay, fine. Jaws.
that's-
I don't know.
No, that's just surprising to me. Not that
These
I'm
are
mad at
our
it.
top
I'm-
16. So every time Matt votes for one of his films and
True.
I vote for one of my films, it shouldn't be a surprise.
That's a
That's
good
all I'm
point.
saying. I voted
That's
for
a
my
good
film.
point. That's a good point. All right. Yeah,
I voted for.
Hereditary.
They were
Carrie.
both my films. So
I would have said Jaws.
Of course you would. I know. All right. Now we're down to the top 4. Scream, Invisible Man, Halloween, and Hereditary. Holy shit. 4 of the greatest horror movies ever. All right, cool. Now we have Scream versus Halloween. How fitting. Cool.
Yeah.
Hunter.
Scream.
I'll go Scream. Carrie.
Halloween.
Halloween.
Matt.
Halloween.
Halloween.
See? All right. The Invisible Man versus Hereditary. I'll go Fudge. Hereditary.
The Invisible Man.
Hereditary.
The Invisible Man. Hunter, you break it.
The Invisible Man.
All right. Invisible Man wins there.
Shit.
Not mad at it. Halloween versus the
I've
Invisible
been
Man.
mad at it for 3 rounds.
All right. Hunter.
The Invisible Man.
Halloween. Carrie.
Halloween.
Halloween.
As much
Dylan.
as I want to back my own film here, I will go Halloween here. Yes.
Of course, Halloween wins.
I am fine being the lone vote for Invisible Man with the last
And we
one.
are hashtag basic, but for a good reason, because this is
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is a great
Yeah. I mean, it's seriously one of the greatest horror movies ever
Mhm.
made, if not the one. It was so influential. So yeah. And thank you guys so much for being on. Thank
You guys did Alien dirty.
Watching.
You did Alien dirty.
Sure. We still have a few minutes. I'll just really quickly, Dylan, plug your stuff, and then Matt.
I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I mean, I know it's tough, especially with as the rounds went on. I mean, obviously Matt and I put up our favorites, so like it was going to be a tough cuts no matter what. So like the little nuances, I do apologize if I upset anyone with my voting, but
No.
I voted for the ones I like more. I'm sorry, but I think this was a lot of fun, and ultimately Matt's films did win, so Matt has better taste. You just look at that whole first round, that whole left side is all Matt, but I think for good reason. He has great taste, and that's why I think it's awesome that we got to champion his films and mine here, because I think it's a fun bunch of films to compare. And yeah, you can find me at the Dyl Pickle Movie Network, where I'm doing shows with all these people. Chad, we do Picture This. Matt, we do Frame Wreck. Hunter and Carrie guest often on other shows. So I'm very grateful for this community and for you guys having us on here and letting us just share our love for these horror movies. It's been a lot of fun. I am still a emerging horror fan, so just to be in the presence of you four, it's intimidating. So voting the wrong way always had me a little scared and it made me feel a little bit bad, but I am still proud that I got to rep some great films. So yeah.
Matt,
I'm mad at the way you voted. No, of course I'm not. You didn't once vote the wrong way. You voted the way you wanted. Like that's a silly thought, Dylan. Stop it. I am upset about some of the outcomes, but that has nothing to do with any individual vote. I just love Alien so much that it surprised me that it went down like a. Anyway, you can find me on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network, as he mentioned, on Frame Wreck, where we talk about bad movies, where we talk about Troll 2, which was robbed in this, and then I'm also on Draft Day a lot and other places. I don't know, just Google me. And coming up, there will be an announcement for future things involving Matt, but I'm not going to say it here because I don't know the specifics yet.
Also,
yeah.
Also, if you're a Survivor fan, Matt and I just recorded before this a 4-hour video breaking down. Yeah, this is a big streaming day for us. Breaking down our picks for who we want to return for Survivor 50. Jeff Probst announced it's all going to be returning players, so we went season by season.
Ooh, interesting.
Two people per season that we think should be considered for the cast of Survivor 50. So go check out that video. It should be dropping within the week.
4 hours on that, 3 hours on this. Oh.
7 hours, baby.
7 hours.
And there was 4 minutes in between those recordings, just so.
40-minute break. So
I did want to add that we could totally do this again and have a rematch because Matt won this one, but I know Dylan also won because he also adores Halloween. I know, and it's also very fitting because I haven't aired it yet. Well, I won't actually say. I won't actually say why, but when you see our 70s bracket that we're going to release soon, you will see why it's a little bit fitting what won here. And it might not be why you think. But anyways,
is there another film beat that film? Maybe a chompy sharky film.
We'll see. But Matt won this one, but we all won because we got to talk about some.
You got to have
films.
me back for some horror comedy for a horror comedy episode.
Yes, that would be so fun.
That sounds great. Well, we'll discuss that for sure. Yeah, go ahead and close it out, Hunter.
All right, if you guys did enjoy this, please hit that like button, subscribe. Welcome to Prime Time down below, and remember, stay scared.